the
Yeah, I
guns.
do
I mean,
believe in it.
let's not
I
just
believe in a
willy nilly.
registry. I believe in a registry when it comes to modern guns, guns that are like obviously. I think the standard, as far as it's been said before, is guns made after 1889 have been the ones that, for the most part, won't be sold to you unless you put them on a registry. And now the thing is, like, I don't really think people need to register their grandpa's old musket. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, I agree with that. Right? No, of course not.
Yeah, like so I do think that there should be a registry for of course the term being loosely defined assault rifles, you know, like M16s, AR-15s, AK-47s, you know, that general group of guns. The thing is about
I
them,
mean,
I'm
it's
willing to
just you have
classify.
to look. You have to look at the gun. To me, you have to look at these guns. You have to put them in a specific group. Ones that are like we were taught, like was talking about
Hmm.
before. Like not, it's not a handgun. It is specifically designed
For
for
mass human
military
casualties.
operations or mass, human casualty. I mean, like I said, there's a reason why the military uses those weapons because they're efficient at what
Yeah,
they do,
it's
killing
long
other humans.
range. It's long range and much and the thing is it shoots the bullet faster, but it doesn't mean you can fire the gun any faster. Like that's
No,
the
right, but back to the
uh
medical thing, I think I kind of just stopped. I kind of got sidetracked. But back to the medical things, like those bullets shred the organs. Like the doctors at the Parkland shooting were basically saying like it was incredible. Like there was no organ to save. With handgun, they deal with shooting victims a lot at that hospital, and a handgun, you can stop the bleeding. It's a hole. It's an exit wound. You know what I mean? But this was just like I mean, it just shreds people. It's very good at what it does, which is killing humans.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. I definitely understand that there is a distinction between a gun that was specifically meant to kill deers and moose and whatnot, and a gun that's meant to kill humans. Like there's
Right.
people, the military is not taking old school hunting rifles into war, so at least I wouldn't expect them to. But the thing is, when it comes to things like what happened in Vegas, I think Vegas is first of all, I found it sort of strange that Trump brings up bump stocks after the Parkland shooting, but not after the Vegas shooting. First of all, the Vegas shooting had more casualties. I understand that the Parkland shooting might be a bit more emotionally impactful for people because it's a school. I think rightfully so. But I think for a large part, it seems strange that it's like why bring up bump stocks after a situation where it wasn't used, but not after a situation where it was used.
I mean,
And
I honestly think Trump was doing what Trump does best and just paying lip service, basically. I mean, I don't
I
see a
don't
rational
know.
reason for it. I mean,
Did you watch the interactions between him and the other senators and whatnot in the room when they were talking about the NRA and
yeah,
everything? He's sort of like
yes,
openly
no, I
slamming the
have.
NRA and their
He
supporters.
he was, and then he had like a private dinner with them, and I don't know. I find it I really find it hard to believe anything that comes out of Trump's mouth as genuine. I mean, I just he's a very good
Do you see him as a
communicator.
gun nut though? Do you really see him as like a
No, I
constitutionalist
actually
gun
no,
nut?
I see Trump as someone who's going to do what's politically expedient for him, what's best for Trump, whether that's
I think
supporting
he does
guns or big.
understand
I
that if
don't
he
really
doesn't
think
do
that he's a.
something,
I
I,
don't no, I don't see Trump as like a gun. No, I don't think he gives a shit. Honestly, either way.
I think he does give a shit. I think it's. I don't like
Well,
attaching
okay, but not. I
motives to
don't think
people.
enough. I don't think enough. Well, I think you can. I mean, I know you don't like attaching motives to people, but you can attach motives based on people's actions. You're not going to be 100%
You
correct, but
really
that's
are
what
you
human
really gonna
communication is.
but are you really gonna sit here and say you think Trump doesn't care about kids dying? The man is just not that cold-hearted. I don't buy it. I don't see it in him. Like it takes
I didn't
that's
say that he didn't
sociopathic.
care about kids dying. I said he doesn't really care about guns either way, as far as policy
Well,
or
that's part
position
of the
on them.
discussion. That like
It
that's
is part of the discussion, but I really like maybe that opened his eyes a little bit. Maybe it made him care more than he did. But I feel like, um, I mean, Trump is narcissistic and sociopathic, though. I mean, when
I
you look
don't
at him,
believe you
though.
could say narcissist. I don't agree he's sociopathic. I don't agree. So I've heard this so many times before. I don't buy it. I've seen too much compassion from him to think that he is sociopathic.
Maybe definitely narcissistic though. I mean, he definitely. I mean, I don't know to what extent he cares for other people, but it's pretty clear, in my opinion, based on his actions and his words, that Trump cares about Trump and little else. I mean, Trump, in more so than whatever. I guess every human cares about themselves to an extent, but I mean, Trump is out for Trump.
I'm
I
not
mean,
going to deny he has an ego. He obviously has an ego. I think it's really surprising sometimes when you see him talking to the press when he's in like a conference room and he's like under a bit of pressure. You definitely see a lot of nervousness because he doesn't want to fuck up. And I think he has a sort of fear of slipping his tongue because I think he's aware that he does it a lot. Nobody who is as criticized for saying things at least poorly or just downright wrong. Well, I don't think they could be unaware that sometimes they run off at the mouth a bit, and I think he has a sort of, um, I think he has a sort of
um,
nervousness about that when it comes to being in front of the press. But then also, if you see him when he's in front of his rallies, in front of all of his supporters, the thousands of people in the stadiums, and whatnot, he's incredibly confident. He's incredibly well spoken. He has this again. He can still stumble over his words sometimes. He can still say some things that I wish he wouldn't have said. But but is a much different Trump than the kind of person you get with 20 cameras in his face, microphones all around him, and he feels like he's under pressure. I do think that his ego wanes a little bit. I think now that he's been a bit sobered by responsibility, the ego is starting to wane a little bit. And that's why I think he's willing to, compromise on these sort of things, especially considering guns, because while here's the thing, when it comes to winning issues between both parties, gun control is the least supported, least popular issue as far as the Party's platform goes. The majority of the country does not support widespread gun control in any form. Okay, it's sort of part of the culture that you're fighting, and I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying that's the reality. We have a gun culture in this country. We're a country based on individual rights to own such things like that. It's not it's not necessarily something I can defend principally because if you can have the right to own guns, what says you can't have a helicopter and bombs and shit like that? I understand that
right.
the line seems blurry to some people, but I think it's been well established for so long that it's sort of now for the most part understood, and that most people who would go out, people don't go hunting with bombs. So the average person who's interested in obtaining bombs is going to be a criminal, somebody that we should be looking out for
Yeah,
anyways.
typically. I mean, I have a hard line, and my hard line is hunting and self defense weapons should absolutely be allowed. I mean, I
Okay, so what about
typically.
hunting rifle modifications then? Here, that's where the line gets really blurry for me because a lot of times people
Okay.
just see a visual difference in guns and they say one's an assault rifle and one's a hunting rifle because people associate hunting rifles with being like wooden, old school stock hunting rifles.
No,
And
I
then
know they're not like that. I mean, my aunt, dude, I don't own guns. My uncle is. I mean, they can be what you can truly call gun nuts, and I'm not using
mhm,
it as a pejorative. They truly are gun nuts. My cousin Alan is a gun nut. He loves
I don't see
guns.
it as
He
a
owns
pejorative
guns. I mean,
either.
well, so a lot of people use it like that though, but
Yeah, I
like
know.
nut, gun nut. But anyway, as far as hunting modifications, I suppose like going back to what is it designed for. And as far as like AR-15s and those types of weapons, I don't see the problem with letting specific dealers like gun ranges and stuff own these sorts of weapons, and people being able to go and shoot these sorts of weapons, or even become a little familiar. But just as far as like the access to them, even if you're not a criminal now, I mean, most of these, except for this last one, there was all kinds of red flags about this guy. But a lot of these mass shooters, they don't really have that much of a criminal history before they snap and do what they do. I mean, and as far as the mental illness thing goes, obviously it is hard to say that these people are not mentally ill in some way. But when you're talking about mental illness as like kind of mental illness, actually less than, I think it's like two. I'd have to check my numbers for sure, but I'm very confident it's under 10% of mental ill people commit homicide. Okay, they're actually more likely to become
I actually
victims
totally
of
agree with that.
homicide.
I
You know what
totally
I
agree
mean?
with that. I bitch about that that conversation all the time. People want to immediately allocate blame to people with mental health issues, like the like sort of diagnosable, clinically diagnosed mental health issues, things like autism, ADHD, schizophrenia, all these sort of things that we've been made terrified of through movies and whatnot. I think a lot of people want to say like, oh, well, that's the cause of it. We shouldn't let people we deem as crazy, the government. We should let the government determine who is mentally fit to own a gun. That's where the conversation gets a bit hazy for me because it's like I know autistic people that are incredibly intelligent and kind. They would never go around shooting people if they owned a gun. And I know
Hmm.
one that actually does have guns. And I think it's actually really cruel to condemn and I don't think it's intentional, but it is sort of being done. This condemnation of the entire community of people who have mental health issues, that like as if they're all just like sporadic and irrational and dysfunctional in society, as if
I
like they're all
don't. Yeah,
dangerous.
I I
I don't think
agree.
you're
It
saying
shouldn't
that.
really be mental health. You know what it should be? It should be violence. If even
Depression and
something simple,
radicalism.
if you've gotten into 7 bar fights in the last 5 years, maybe you shouldn't own a gun. Okay, you're a violent person, and I'm not talking about like you just got into fights, but actually maybe had run-ins with the law because you were in a bar fight or something. If you hit your wife, okay, you shouldn't have a gun. Like I think violence is a better like there are people that have a propensity towards violence. I mean, it's just a fact of life. And
Absolutely.
those people should not have guns. So they could be schizophrenic, they could be violently schizophrenic, they could not be violently schizophrenic, they could just be
Yeah.
schizophrenic. You know what I mean? It's to me the measure is violence, but that's a hard one to measure because how do you know someone's violent until they actually commit an act of violence? I mean, I'm sure there are signs, but then again, that's hazy because now the government's saying, well, you have signs of, even though you've not done anything violent, you have signs of someone that would be, and blah, blah,
A
blah. And
potential,
that's a tough
sort
one,
of like a
too.
flight risk.
Yeah, sort of like a flight risk, exactly. But, dude, if you have a domestic violence charge on your record, I'm sorry, you shouldn't own a fucking gun. I mean, in
Well,
my
first,
opinion,
first of all, if
you
you're a
know?
felon, you already can't own a gun, and
Well,
like
right. No, you're
I'm
right.
pretty
Yeah,
sure domestic
absolutely.
violence is a felony. But it,
I don't know if it always is. I'd have to
I
look on
think
that.
it
I don't
depends on
know
the
either way,
severity. I think it
honestly.
probably depends on
Yeah,
the severity.
and
You know.
that's a kind of little bit of hazy of a line too, because I've not known anybody personally, but through the grapevine, known somebody that's known somebody that had thrown a fucking plate at the wall and not hit anybody, and they got a domestic violence charge. You know what I mean?
Well, I would definitely
So.
say that counts. That's it's attempted assault at least.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know the whole story, but it was told to me as if they were just letting off steam, like I would punch a wall instead of my spouse or
Well,
whatever.
I
But
mean,
again, I mean I don't go around punching walls when I'm angry because I'm not a violent person. So.
yeah, and if the plate was thrown in the direction of someone that just happened to duck or something, I would still call that attempted assault.
Right, right. But again, I mean, I hope you see my point though. That's even
Hmm.
sometimes run-ins with the law are questionable, right? Like
Yeah, I
my
also
my
support
DUI, I got the
GVRs.
morning after. I stayed the night at a party. I got it the morning after, man. Like, okay, I was still fine. Legally should have been driving, but it's not like I was like out just drinking and driving. I actually attempted to do the responsible thing, but when you look at my record, it just says DUI. There's no explanation. It's just I'm drinking and driving. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and here's the thing too. I also specifically relating to how we can try to prevent more mass shootings, especially school shootings. Since well, the thing is, the sad part is that the majority of school shooters are over the age of 21, and I think Trump's suggesting to raise the age of gun ownership up to 21. First of all, I understand that there's a precedent for it because first you can't own a handgun until you're 21, but you can own a rifle. And
Right.
I understand that, but you can also begin voting when you're 18. You can join the military. You can join a police academy. You can do all these other sort of things that the government will allow you to use a gun for. You can go over to another country before you're 21 and kill a guy that you'll never know. But at the same time, you come back home, you're not allowed to have that same rifle to defend your own
Yeah.
house. And
I
so
tend
like
to agree with you on this one.
yeah, like I'm not for raising the age. I think it's rather. I think if you're going to do it, fine, but raise the age of everything else as well. Raise the age of voting. Raise the age of driving. Raise the age of I think driving, especially driving, like why even let people drive if you're not gonna let them own guns? Like I think it takes more trust from people to know how to drive than to trust for them to not to shoot you. It takes
Right.
motivation to shoot you. It doesn't take a motivation for every car crash. So why do we
No.
trust people with those sort of things, but we're not but we can't trust people with these guns? And so I'm not for raising the age. And like I said, but like I'll tolerate it if you go ahead and if you raise the general standard of adulthood to being 21 rather than 18, and all societal functions become more available to you when you're 21. Hell, honestly, there's an argument for 25, honestly, because and especially in men, your brain isn't even fully developed till you're 25, and so
I mean,
it's
that's when
like,
your insurance. I mean, I'm an insurance agent. That's when your insurance starts to go down. Your auto insurance is when you're 25.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
So
I
like there are
mean,
reasons for this. I understand. I just think that if you're gonna do it, you have to do it across the board. We can't just like specifically, like first of all, in the Constitution, one of the reasons you're allowed to own the guns is because people think that if you're part of a militia, you have the right to own a gun by the Second Amendment and whatnot. Technically, every male between the ages of 18 to 45 that is of able body is part of a United States militia that would be drafted if we were for the the likelihood of it is probably decreased these days with the strength of our military, so therefore the necessity of it. But fundamentally, the purpose of it was so that in case America's mainland were to ever be invaded, as it never has been, but in case it were, there would be a plethora of able-bodied men to fight.
right, right.
That's where it becomes a bit more necessary. Everybody's got to kind of quit their jobs for a little bit and fight. You know,
Yeah,
um,
right. I mean, we
so you
saw
would
that to an
typically
extent.
want an armed citizen. You would want a majority armed citizenry, at least like 40 to 50% of people armed already. You
I
know.
mean, I don't know if I necessarily even agree with that, though. I mean, the United States military. I mean, we're not talking about Sweden here. We're talking about the United States military. I don't really think the United States needs its citizens to be armed in such a way. I
It would
mean,
certainly help if they were.
you know
You
what
would
I
have less
think? I think
casualties.
that our citizenry needs to be healthy and educated, which we are not. I mean, there's actually the military qualifications are just people just can't meet them because they're not
Well, there's a lot of health problems in America.
there's a lot of health problems. There's a lot of problems with people not graduating high school. You know what I mean? And not that high school is the measure of being informed or
Yeah.
whatever, but still, this is a problem that we're the most entertained and least informed country in the world to an extent. I mean, I don't know. I just can't accept this more guns mentality. If anything, we need less guns. And I'm not trying to take anybody's guns away, but I'm just saying, like, there's to me in this gun debate, there are two solutions. There are two arguments. There is. You want to fix the problem, and you look to what every other industrialized country in the world has done, which has worked. So all these solutions, and I put solutions in quotation marks, that all these people come
Hmm.
up with, we have data. This experiment's been done before. We have data that these countries don't have mass shootings because they have gun control. Okay? You either say
Yeah.
that's the solution, that we know that there's a solution. Okay? There it is. We have it. Or you say because of individual rights, I am okay with the collateral damage. And
Okay,
not
but
that not that's not to say that
no,
you're a monster and you're okay with kids dying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying though, I don't see any other argument besides
there
that
is a
because there
total
is a
different argument.
solution. There is a solution to this problem right in front of us, and
The
we just
collateral
refuse to implement
damage
it.
is not the result of legal gun owners for the grand majority of it. Like the majority of people who commit crimes with guns, we're not just talking about mass shootings here, but generally all murder through use of guns is generally done by people who are criminals and should already not have guns and legally cannot. And the thing is, I am also a supporter of what's called GVROs, especially in the case of mass shootings. I was trying to get to this before I talked about the age thing. I think GVROs are a good solution to a lot of this. And the thing is, you've heard with talks of terrorism and whatnot before. If you see something, say something. Well, in the case of Parkland, Florida, Nicholas Cruz's parents actually did see something, and I'm sorry, his adoptive parents, I should say, did see something, and they did say something about it 39 fucking times. It was mentioned to the goddamn FBI for fucking Pete's sake. there's all these sort of government failures that happened that nobody acted on it because we say see something, say something, but we don't do anything about it. And so like I think that's the case where, especially in a case like Nicholas Cruz, you could have stripped away his individual gun rights before he ever committed a crime. And I'm not generally for the idea of thought crimes, but if we could see that there's clear evidence of you planning an attack on something, I don't care if you're using a gun, a bomb, or any sort of weapon at all. If you plan on using a truck and a knife like a lot of people in Europe do these days, and it's like there's all sorts of things we should prevent you from having if you are showing red flags, signs of, clear signs, obvious signs where like you are actually like a lot of these people that people want to talk about mental health and whatnot. These people plan this shit out. Like they do these things months ahead of time. What was it? The guy from Vegas? He was in there like 2 months. He was in that hotel 2 months ahead of time, mapping shit
Hmm.
out. And so it's like, yeah, they're insane in a sense, but they're also competent. They're competently insane. They know what they're doing. They're crazy enough to be smart enough to pull these things off because it does take a certain set of skills to do something like this, as awful as it is to have to admit. It's like it's not exactly easy to get that many guns like that guy had up in that hotel room. This is someone with some sort of training, you know. I mean, I'm not suggesting any sort of conspiracy that he was trained by the government or anything like that, but this guy has obviously been trained by somebody somewhere to learn how to do these sort of things because that was a heist he pulled off. That wasn't just like rolling up into an Ariana Grande theater with a bomb strapped to your chest, where it's like it's fucking no planning whatsoever. You plan to die in it, and that was
Well,
another.
yeah, no, he absolutely planned it, but I'm saying I don't know about a heist. I mean, the guns. That's what I'm saying. And like in America, if you see someone with a gun, you can't assume they're a criminal because guns are so widespread and they're so easily accessible and legal. If I see someone carrying a gun at the grocery store, I don't assume they're a criminal. I just assume they're a fucking person with a gun. If I saw a person if I saw a pickup truck and it had a bunch of guns in the back of it, I would think nothing of it. You know
The
what I'm
issue is,
saying?
I think all public buildings, when it comes, like just like we treat airports and banks, we should have incredible security in our schools, in our concert venues, like yeah, even most arenas you go to and everything these days, they have metal detectors. There's cops all over the place. I'm not saying like I want like a full hardcore police state or anything, but like that is eventually, whether it's through gun control or through resistance to gun control, that's probably the state we're heading towards to begin with anyways, because people are willing to sacrifice freedom for safety. And that is sort of the conflict that you've always kind of heard of, you've always seen with these sort of discussions, is that, do we care more about our safety or do we care more about our freedom? So I understand your argument about how it's like, people, you feel as if they're willing to have the collateral damage as long as they have the freedom. And I feel like, obviously,
But
through
that's why my whole point is everybody dances around the solution. There's a solution. So it's either you implement the solution that we know works because it's worked in every other nation that's implemented it, or
it's
we just
hell.
say we're okay with dead children for our rights. Because now you want to
See,
take away other people's rights for your right to own a gun. Because now you want to turn schools into fucking prisons and
it's not
public
turning them into
buildings and
prisons.
airports.
I
I'm
don't,
sorry,
I don't,
man.
I don't,
It's
I don't
and
see
who's
the.
going here's another thing too. Who is going to pay for all of this? We can't even get teachers good salaries, or they have to buy their own art supplies and own things that they're not even equipped well enough to educate our children. So who's going to pay for this? And
I'm not
that's why
suggesting
this
arming
argument
teachers with
pisses me off
guns.
so much because it's so sad
I'm not
that
suggesting arming
we
teachers with guns. We already have people
no,
with
I
guns.
know you're not. I'm saying like with the heightened security, this and that. And yes,
I think
schools our kids should be
voluntarily
protected
certain.
too, or you know there is a level of uh culpability that the state has when we give them, because we're forced to send you go to jail if you don't send your child to school, right? So they have some culpability in keeping your child safe. They have a responsibility, what I mean, the
The
state or
security
the
does. The
county.
t- the
Yes.
teacher.
No, the
The
teachers do not, but the state themselves. But that's what I'm saying. Like, we can't even pay our teachers to. So now we have to pay security guards, and we have to buy metal detectors, and all this. Like, where's all this money going to come from
I
when
mean,
we can't even
honestly, dude,
educate our children?
I've always been for education reform and paying teachers more, and I am generally for.
No,
And here's the thing.
I know you do. I know you are.
Yeah, so it's like I think it's a combination of issues, and if the question is to arm teachers, I say have a paid incentive. Like if I learn how to use new equipment at my job, there's a paid incentive to do so. Like you get a raise because you're generally better trained now, you're more educated and everything, and you have new abilities. And I think that's one way you could implement a voluntary incentive-based system in not all teachers, but I think honestly,
No,
if even
I
one,
don't even.
if
I don't want
even one
any
teacher,
teachers armed. I don't
I,
want any teachers armed.
I don't think that they should
Listen,
be armed
the
on their
NYPD,
person. I don't,
the NYPD is one of the is considered one of the highest trained police forces in the United States. Okay, in shootouts, and I can find the link or whatever. So this is
I
a
saw the
scientific study
article.
done. Yes, they hit their targets 18% of the time.
You
Even
also have to
soldiers,
consider
even trained
situations.
soldiers, not all of them, but they're much better than police.
You
But even
also have
trained
to
soldiers
consider
lose their shit
situations.
in live fire situations. Okay,
Yeah,
and it
I
is different
understand that.
situations.
Yeah,
But this is,
we're not expecting teachers to become police or soldiers.
but that's
Like
what I'm saying. Even voluntarily are a terrible idea because for every one story that you might have of a teacher stopping somebody, how many stories are they going to have if there is a mass shooting? And even most law enforcement will say that they don't want other people armed in mass shooting situations because they don't know who the hell the shooter is. It just creates chaos and confusion.
I've heard police officers and other law enforcement officials say differently, but I can understand how it's not. They obviously don't speak for all of them. I,
Right,
I,
of
I don't I
course.
don't I don't think that every cop would agree with that. But the thing is, I'm not like I generally would prefer not to arm teachers and whatnot, but I do understand the voluntary based argument. I'm definitely never going to support like mandatorily training and requiring teachers to carry guns. And even a voluntary based system, I would prefer that they did not carry it on their person. I prefer they carried it in like well, I'm sorry, not carried it, but kept it in a safe while they're there, and then obviously took it home with them when they left the school and have that safe be either through like a voice command or a fingerprint lock and like protect it incredibly well, protect it way more than you would protect it in any other situation. A lot of people keep a handgun in their nightstand. Obviously like you can't put your handgun in your desk drawer at a school. It would need to be in a hidden location only known to the teacher. And only obviously like I would not even inform the students. I would inform the parents that there was gun. Like if there's a teacher voluntarily doing this, I would inform the parents and allow the parents to take their kids out of that class if they chose to do so. There's all sorts of ways you actually could implement something like this where it can be incredibly safe and the gun never even has to be seen until the time actually comes where one could help. And I understand your point where you're talking about with the accuracy and whatnot, but you really do have to consider the situation. Most school shooters are typically 1 to 2 people going in there and doing it. It's usually only one, and it's not
One to
going.
two
It's not
people with an AR-15
okay.
specifically designed for
I
long
understand.
range mass
I understand.
casualties, and then you have a
Yes,
handgun.
yeah, yes, but my point is that the type of target that you're shooting at when you're combating something like that is much different than what the police handle on a day-to-day basis. We talk about that they have an 18% hit rate. How many police chases have they been on in New York City? Hitting, trying to shoot moving targets, and like trying not to hit other civilians, but not at the same time. And yeah, you sort of face some of the same issues in a school, but to a much lesser extent. Like first of all, you're on foot and the target's not moving quite as much as they would be out in the streets where there's more room and everything like that. There's all sorts of different scenarios that you could be in, and the thing is,
It's not about the moving targets. I think you're failing to understand what the whole point of it is when a human being is taking fire, when they are under fire, they tend to lose their shit. And by
yeah.
losing their shit, I don't mean like go all hysterical like but they are not as accurate. They're not thinking clearly. I mean, this the fight or flight response. They're physiologically losing their shit is what I'm saying.
Look,
So
here's the
even
thing. That's
even highly
true.
trained people do this. Okay,
Yeah,
now
even highly
now
trained people
so
can, but not all of
how
them.
no, not all of them. No, of course not. But how many teach how so how are you going to do that? So you're going to say, I'm sorry, but I have a daughter. I have a 15-year-old daughter that goes
Hmm.
to school, and I do not want any of her teachers having a gun. I'm sorry, I do not.
Well,
It's
first of all,
absurd.
I think if we were going to at least test implementing it, I think it should be done in private schools to begin with. And I know that sounds a little strange because, for the most part, school shootings don't happen at private schools. A lot of them are at public schools, and I think that's an obvious failure of the public school system. And honestly, I think it's sort of inherent in the toxic atmosphere in public schools. Like, it's very like in the thing I'll put it to you like this. I went to a private school for one grade in elementary school, and it was the weirdest grade I ever went through in school. And it was third grade, and it was a Catholic church school, and everybody wore the same uniform. Everybody was sort of the same for the most part. There was no uniqueness or diversity or anything like that. It was like everybody kind of wore one of three shirts that were assigned to you every day, and nobody looked either richer or poorer than either. It sort of declassified different people. It kind of brought people together in a sense, and I think one of the reasons that you see private schools have a lot less violence, just not just mass shootings, whatnot, is because there's a culture within them that is more based on social cooperation and understanding of others, and it's more inclusive in a sense. Um, a lot of people might disagree with that because simply because of the fact that it's a private school and you have to pay to go there. So there's a bit of exclusivity to it. But within there, it's you don't see the same sort of behaviors pop up generally in private schools than you do in public schools, and that's why I think there should be an option for people who want to send their kids to private schools. I don't think when I say private schools, everybody always assumes I mean religious schools. Like for the most part, I'm not talking about that, but I think it's obvious that the majority of private schools are religious schools because they want to teach things the way they perceive them. But I generally think more private schools would be a benefit to the country, especially secular private schools, where the stigma of the religious fanaticism being taught is removed, and I, I think generally we should go down that path. I think we should go down the path of privatizing for most people schooling. I still think we should still have a public school system, but I think for anybody that wants more than that, they should have access to it. And I would be for like a
But what
social.
does that have to do with casino? But this is my problem with
I
any
think
with
the biggest
any
problem is the
gun
culture of the
debate is we
schools.
we dance in circles. It's not though, because
It
all these
is
other
kind of.
countries all these other countries have the same problems as America. Okay, they
Okay,
have
but can you
public
explain
school
why it's just
systems.
public schools that cause this? I'm not, again, we're not just talking about mass shootings, but like the general sort of violence that you see in sort of public high schools and middle schools. Like you just don't see it
I
in
mean,
private ones.
I don't know. I've never had the I've never went to a private school. I'm
But when
really
was the
not
last
sure.
time you heard about a shooting
But
at a
I
private
but I
school?
understand what this has to do with anything. You're reverting from the topic at hand, which is gun control, which I pointed out there is a solution staring at us in the face, and
And I
that's what my whole
agree with
problem
multiple of
is.
the
Uh, th-
solutions.
Dude, this is my whole problem with people. Okay, they want to dance around. They want to come up. Well, what if we did this? What if we armed teachers? What if we did this? Actually, if we just had gun control, we would cut down on this because we've seen it. We've done this experiment. The United States is not the only country in the world. There are other countries that have mental illness, that have all these things that people say, okay, and they don't have
I've
mass
agreed with
shootings at
multiple of
the
your
chronic rate.
solutions.
Okay,
Okay,
they don't have mass
look,
shootings at the
you can
chronic rate that the
calm down a
United
little. You
States
can
does,
calm
like
down a little
that.
bit, man, because
But
I'm
what
being
I'm saying is, dude,
like, I mean, you're getting a little hostile though. Like, I've already agreed with multiple of the solutions that you suggested, and I even suggested a few to you as well. So I'm not dancing around anything. I'm talking about more solutions. It takes more than just gun control. Okay, it's not like it's a one and done thing. We're gonna do one thing about this and it's gonna solve the problem. That's not true. There are actors behind these guns. There are people responsible for these things. It's not just the gun's fault. Yes, we can blame the guns to a
No,
certain
it is
extent.
not the
And I'm
gun's
not
fault. It is the easy access to the guns that these people have. And if
okay,
they
okay,
didn't
but
have the
like, so
easy
nobody's.
access, they wouldn't
But
be able
I,
to
I just
carry
don't
out
under,
these attacks.
I just don't understand the hostility because I've already agreed with limiting access greatly. Like the thing is with something like GVROs, that is going to hinder a lot of people's ability to get guns. And yeah, like I do generally think that sort of philosophy of where you can actually do something after you say something to the authorities about it. And I mean either temporarily or permanently and indefinitely strip somebody's individual rights to own a gun. We could do all those sort of things. I'm not for the universal right to own guns. The right to own a gun is not universal. For the most part, honestly, it should be seen as a privilege. And I'm generally for privileges more than I am for rights to begin with. Because the very idea of a right, first of all, a right has to be enforced. A privilege has to be earned. And so just like you're saying, you talk about the access, the easy access to guns. You should have to earn the privilege of access to own guns. And so we agree as far as that goes. Do I think the right to own a gun should ever be taken away? No. No, I don't. But the privilege to it should be for individuals who do deserve it to be taken away. And again, when I'm talking about societal issues that could be leading towards these kind of attacks, that's not going to stop if you just take guns away. People are going to find other ways to hurt people, and you can see that in all these other countries you're talking about, where yeah, people have virtually no access to guns unless they go through the black market, and you do see gun crime go down, but you don't see overall violent crime going down that much. And it's strange because gun crime is the majority of violent crime in a lot of places before gun control is put into policy. And but then you start seeing more things like bombs and knives and trucks being ran into people. And I know that obviously some people are going to be less afraid of a bomb going off. They see like even through the black market, it's going to be harder for you to come across a bomb than it is for you to come across an illegal gun. So like, as far as access goes, I think only people who we've determined to have the privilege of owning guns should own them. People who have demonstrated that they are first of all, competent, functional members of society, people who are not malicious in any sort of their intents. Um, you get the general picture of what I'm saying. Like you understand what the difference between the concepts of privileges and rights are. You know what I mean?
No, I get the idea of privileges and rights. And I mean, honestly, I just don't see. I mean, I see a certain right to be able to hunt. If you want to put food on your table for your family, other than going to the grocery store, I would never want to take that person's right or privilege away unless they did something that warranted it. As far as defending yourself, I mean, actually, most most gun owners, their guns used against them. But whatever, if you want a gun for self-defense, then fine, by all means have a gun in your home for self-defense. It's just mainly that the I do not think that civilians should have any access to literally weapons specifically designed for mass killing. You should be able to have to go to join a shooting club or go to the gun range, and you pass a background check, you're allowed to go on the range, you're allowed to fire these weapons, or join the military. you
I,
know
I can
um
understand. I can understand the reasoning behind that, and I agree to some extent. But my issue with it is that it's very, very authoritarian thinking to think that the government and the police and the military should have access to all the best rifles and everything that civilians do not have access to. And it sort of rings back to the Revolutionary War where, the colonists and whatnot had muskets and very, very let's say primitive weaponry compared to the British Army, who was incredibly well armed with the largest navy the world's ever fucking seen. And it's sort of scary to me to imagine where it's like, okay, we already don't have tanks, we already don't have Apache helicopters, we already don't have bombs, we already don't have all these other sort of things that the military doesn't have, and now we're gonna lose something else, and that's where it's like, come the time, and I don't accept the argument that America's immune to it, and I also don't like the argument that it's impossible for the people to fight back against. America, because like the American government, because first of all, like me and you talked about before, I don't believe the entire military would fight against its own citizens. In fact, I don't think the majority of people in the military would fight against its own citizens. Not only is it constitutionally obligated to help the civilians fight against the tyrannical government, um, I also think morally most people fighting the military would feel obligated to fight for the citizenry. You get what I mean? So like, I don't accept
I get what you're
the
saying.
idea that I don't accept the idea that we can never defeat the government if the time ever came where we had to. First of all, like ask the Koreans and ask the Vietnamese how that went for them. They gave them a run for their money, and we never ended those wars. Like we're still active in the Korean War technically. It still could flare back up at any time, you know. And so it's like countries have fought America before and defeated us in many ways. You know, we've won all of the wars we've ever been involved. Well, not except for War of 1812. Um, but like we never like. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting mixed up here. I can't think of an actual American war that we have actually lost. What? I mean, you might know better than I do.
I
But like,
mean, arguably, arguably the war on terror, it will never be won. I mean,
well,
the
that's a different kind of
Afghanistan,
war.
Iraq, can you really say that we've won those? I guess you can in a way, but
Well, you know, like the whole thing of we
I
is
guess
like the
we
motivations behind
defeated their
those wars.
army. The
Okay, well,
army
the
that was
point I'm
there.
getting to, the point I'm
Well, I
getting
know what
to
you're
is that
saying.
we're not
I get what
invincible.
you're saying.
The
No, we're not
American
invincible, and I do not think that the American military is invincible. And honestly,
no.
I do not think that the citizens need AR-15s to defend against a tyrannical government. I think they need because honestly, you don't think you think well, okay, we don't need as easy access as we do. Okay, to defend against a tyrannical government. And honestly, I'm not even necessarily for a total ban of AR-15s. Like I said, they should just be really hard to get or
You should,
really hard to
yes.
own. I
I think
mean,
me and you would ultimately agree on this point. Like, just like I pointed out, yes, they should be harder to get because it should be defined as a privilege rather than a right.
yeah,
And just like
honestly, any
many
gun should
things.
be hard to get, even a shotgun, in my opinion, but maybe not as hard as 15. And honestly, like I
I
like the
think when it
idea of
comes to
having.
inheritance, there's a difference. I think if you
Okay,
inherit
here's a
guns, that's a
well,
different
yeah,
thing.
that's a tricky territory, but here's a good analogy, right? Okay, you can buy cars and you have to be licensed, you have to be registered, but you cannot drive a Formula One racing car down the highway, and that's for a reason. But if you have the money, you can go and you can go to a track and you can drive one. Okay, after passing some, whatever. I don't know the process. My uncle did it.
No, I
Okay,
understand.
all right, you get what I'm saying. Why can't that same kind of logic be applied to guns? Like, yes, you're okay.
I
You're
think it
you're
can be.
run of the mill like shotguns, handguns. I get it. Help self defense. I think we still should make it harder than it is now, but not like impossible, right? To own a hunting rifle or a
I'm all for what you're
handgun for self
saying.
defense.
I'm all
But
for
as
what you're
far
saying if
as
it's done on an individual basis and not a wide sweeping collective judgment. Like if
no,
we
it
do
should be an
exactly what you're
individual
saying,
basis. If you have
yeah,
a criminal record, no, you should not have a
or
gun.
even
But
just a
me, I don't
history
have
of
a criminal.
violence,
Right,
or yeah, even if you just have a history of violence or sporadic irrational behavior in the sense that like you might have some sort
right.
of serious mental health issue, or if you're like if you're just some sort of maniac and that you're displaying signs of like potential violence, especially including mass casualties. Yeah, like I think that there has to be a step past just taking guns away from criminals. We have to take away guns from people who are obviously going to become
Well,
criminals.
when you honestly that whole argument though too, I just want to touch briefly though. The reason that the American black market with firearms is just because guns are so easily accessible in the first place. So they're not that expensive even on the black market. They're more expensive on the black market, but they're not. Now Australia, it is expensive as hell to get a gun on the black market
Well, they're
because
on
they
an
don't have
island.
easy access to firearms. Dude, I mean, even Japan, even the UK. I mean, the black market
Those are
for
all
firearms
islands, though.
because there's not so many flooded. Now America will always have guns, okay, but but
Mm.
going back to that original thing, I don't have a criminal record. I don't have anything. So I should be able to go purchase a firearm. I think though that there should still be a waiting period in a background check. And I actually would go as far as saying that I should maybe have to, like, maybe not go as far as have a license, but maybe have to attend a 6 hour class on a Saturday or something like that. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you one
Like,
thing. As far as access from the black market goes, you name three countries there: Japan, Australia, and the UK. And I might sound silly to you, but there's honestly a geographic element in why they are more successful in keeping illegal
I
firearms
know
out
they're
of their
all
country.
islands.
They're all
I know they're
islands, and
islands,
it's not
but
just islands, but like, countries that if the neighboring countries around you don't have a great deal of guns and activity within the black market, you're much less likely to get illegal guns coming through your borders as well. It's not just islands, but like even Italy has a very low rate of black market activity involving illegal gun sales. It's not, again, not just because they're a peninsula rather than an island. It's just when there's already no guns around you, a lot of guns don't really come into your country much. America, on the other hand, is one of the biggest countries in the world and directly borders two other countries. Canada, who has, for the most part, legal gun rights. There are much more restrictions, much more forms of gun control in Canada than there are in America, but the black market does still exist in a greater form than it does in places like Europe. Um, but also, we are attached directly to America, to the South America and Mexico, and that is, I mean, I don't think it even needs to be said that the black market sort of, especially for guns and drugs and whatnot, sort of originates from that area. Is like is where it all comes from.
actually, they're pretty expensive in most places. I'm looking at a thing on Forbes about black market weapons. And you know where the cheapest place to get black market arms is? Is Afghanistan.
I can
Believe it or not.
imagine. I could definitely imagine
Yeah.
because how think about the supply of them and how easy it
Well,
is to
right, of
move
course.
them
Of
between
course.
countries.
Of course.
And,
But
and,
even
and
but
most Middle Eastern countries don't have enforced borders. They have universally
right.
recognized borders amongst world governments and whatnot, but God, they're constantly defending their borders.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
They hardly exist. America
I
has a
mean,
pretty well-defined border, unlike a lot of those countries in the Middle East.
I know you got to go soon, but I want to say that when I said that argument about accepting the collateral damage, I didn't just mean that for people who are against gun control. I am not for as much gun control as other countries have. I say that it works because we see the data that it works and we could curb mass shootings, but I am willing to accept some collateral damage to not give up my basically all my freedom for safety. We don't have to take it as far as those other countries do, but there is a clear solution that does work, that it works. We see that it works. That's it. And we're
Well, no
either
matter
as a
what
country
solution we go with, we
going to
do lose
do it.
freedom. Both sides,
Well,
the,
you,
thing-
you
the
always
solutions, yeah,
I
the
mean,
solutions to
you
both of
always
this is
do
going like
to an
both
extent.
both sides suggested solutions, whether it's gun control or an increase in security. First of all, I think there are factors of both that are true, and there are factors of both that are false. And I think there's a third component to it, and that's what I was trying to touch on when it comes to the societal functions. And I actually don't have to go soon. I'm actually good for a little while. I'm going to wait till later to
I
do so.
actually, I actually kind of think it's less of a. I mean, maybe you have something there with the private school, but you know what I really think America has a problem with, and you see this in like places like Central America. Is it's what it was my Facebook post the one day we have a very toxic male culture in the United States. This idea that men are supposed to be a certain way, and typically that's they're not supposed to be sensitive, they're not supposed to talk about their feelings or be emotionally open. They're supposed to be kind of womanizers to an extent, and I don't mean womanizer by like like our culture tells us that we're supposed to sexually assault women and do that, but there is an element of what's the word I'm looking for? Like,
The general term I've heard this before, and I'm indifferent towards it, but I think I'm actually inclined to agree to an extent from my own experiences. Toxic masculinity is, I think, what you're
yeah,
referring to.
toxic masculinity,
And
exactly. And you don't
here's
have
the
to
thing.
agree with all of,
No,
but
I
there's
actually agree
certain
to it. I actually agree to a
there
great
is
extent.
toxic well, people like us know because we're nerds, okay? Like
Hmm.
I can see it just from being a nerd and hanging out with other people who would look down on me because I don't crank on fucking cars and shit, and I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Not that cranking on cars is there's nothing wrong with that.
I
You know
mean,
what I
I'm
mean?
kind of like I definitely agree. Like I am for the most part. People see me as a nerd. I'm pretty fucking nerdy. But I'm nerdy about things like the UFC and pro wrestling. So I'm not like the typical kind of nerd. Pretty the athletic
No, I
nerd.
know what you're saying. Right.
But
Yeah.
like I definitely know exactly what you're talking about. Like there is. I really don't want to. When you say it's toxic masculinity, it happens to girls too. Like nerdy girls and girls who don't really fit in. They experience the same sort of resentment
I
and sort of social
I agree.
discrimination.
I
Like
agree.
it's not just men, but I definitely understand that you could say there's toxic masculinity and there's toxic femininity. Like
There is, but I
there
think the
are.
difference between toxic femininity and toxic masculinity is the violence component.
Yeah, men
I
are
don't
more
think
violent
like
than women.
men are more violent. I mean, what is I don't even know the percentage on that, but it's an insanely high
Yeah,
number. It's
most
like
school shooters aren't
80,
women.
90%. Just homicides in general are perpetuated by men. Most violence is
Yeah,
perpetuated by men in our country. I mean,
that's
it's
true.
a extremely high
I
number.
like it would be a denial of obvious reality to disagree with that.
Yeah, it is. I don't know the exact, but I think it's like 92%. And I could be
Yeah.
wrong. You could fact check
It,
that
it, it,
because it's high.
I think it's
It's
an
really high.
obvious biologically based truth. I think it's just the simple fact that we have more testosterone in us than women do. Is the
Well,
pretty.
okay, like okay, because I'm someone who does kind of I'm kind of a biological determinist. I kind of buy into, Sam
Really?
Harris's idea that we don't really have free will and stuff like that a little bit. Yeah, but
Really?
sort
Ooh,
of not all the way though, because I mean
I understand.
my I studied cultural anthropology in college, and there's definitely social constructions, and we're definitely influenced by social factors and stuff like that. It's not all biological. So that's why I was going to say, like, I can agree with that men do have a biological kind of propensity towards violence, but it's also a toxic male culture, male
I'm very,
toxicity. You know what I mean?
very in shock right now, though. Like you say, biological determinism, like, first of all, I've argued with people on the alt-right about biological determinism, and I'm really surprised to say to hear that you say that you would support something like that, because like I think obviously the counter to that would be environmental determinism. That's sort of what I believe. I think people are for the most part formed by their environment, but we do have free will. So I think we're totally polar opposites as far as that goes. Why exactly do you believe in biological determinism?
Again, I don't necessarily this hardcore biological determinist. It's just that I think it's an obvious thing that we are, in the sense that I didn't there are things about me, my personality, that are biological in nature. My intelligence, my um you
But your
know
intelligence, really? Why do you think you think your intelligence is biologically determined? I don't
yeah, like
understand that.
my education is not biologically determined, but my
Yeah.
intelligence certainly is. I mean, the way that my neural pathways are connecting, I mean, there are certainly people that are dumber than me and smarter than me, and all across the spectrum, and
You're
I
not
don't
like a
think
race
that's
realist, though, are you?
no, no, I don't, no, just
I can't imagine
individually,
that you
right?
are.
Like,
Like, I
okay,
couldn't imagine.
listen,
Yeah.
no, I am not. No, I am not at all. I'm saying individually, right? There are people that don't. Okay, here's a good example. If I sit down, say I sit down with someone who is just, okay, you take me and another person, and we work the same amount. We work just as hard at learning physics. Some people just don't have the hardware, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, to run the software. I am going to end up being a better physicist than that person. Okay? And then you have
Yeah.
someone above me who is going to be a better physicist than I could ever be, even if we work the same amount, because the hardware is not there. And that's what I mean by intelligence. I don't mean it's racial. It's just biological. Like, I just was
Yeah.
blessed with a fairly intelligent mind. You know what I mean?
So
Come on,
you're
there are
talking
people that
about
are
like
just
through
they're dumb.
individual. You talking about like through individual genes, like they're like
Yeah,
there's
individual genetics. I'm not talking about
yeah.
groups of people are better than other groups. I'm saying that there's a
I don't.
biologically
That's yeah.
deterministic. You know what I
I
mean?
definitely
Like,
didn't think you were. For the most part, I was
yeah,
thinking there was some sort of confusion of terms going on here. Because
Mm-mm.
I didn't. Because like for the most part, I've never heard this argument at all from anybody on the left. I think that maybe except for Sam Harris. I think Sam Harris has talked about this to some extent. but I don't really look at Sam Harris as specifically like on the left or anything like that. I understand that he does fall on the left for a number of issues, but I think also that he's really just more of a I think for the great deal of his career, he's always been somewhat of a centrist of whatever kind you want to call him. But he's really focused on religion more than anything else.
Well,
And
he is, but you know what? Maybe me and the alt right are using the terms way differently as well, because I don't like in cultural anthropology. One of the big questions are always when you're doing a case study is what is biologically determined and what is culturally constructed or socially constructed, right? So, why does a mother love her child? Is it because of learning that mothers should love their child, or is there this biologically determined kind of instinct to love your child? That's like
I
an
think some
example.
things are
You know what I mean?
biologically determined, but I don't really
Well,
think
right, and
intelligence is.
I'm not a hardcore biological determinist, but I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes I am, because
I think
think about it.
intelligence is a pretty hardcore thing to assume to be biologically determined, though. Is like because the thing is, if you take someone from a third world country, and like you can actually see this in America's culture, especially like one of the most financially successful groups in America, I believe, is Ethiopians, and
I
it's
think
because you take
right.
people out of third world countries, they're usually incredibly motivated, and they come to first world countries and they're
No,
incredibly
no.
successful.
I I think you're confusing though intelligence with education or being informed. They have the hardware. Okay, these people have the hardware, and once they're given the opportunity in some software to download, they
So you
run
don't
it
think
very
just
well.
anybody from a third world country could come over and do
No,
something like that?
there are dumbass people everywhere, man. Yes, right.
Yeah,
Like you are gonna,
definitely. Yeah,
you know
I
what I mean?
agree.
Like there are people in Ethiopia who just don't have the hardware, and no matter how good of a situation they go in, they're not going to be very good at math or reading or science.
So
You
you
know what I
don't
mean?
think like so you don't think that like because like the past few generations of your family have been pretty stupid that you're more likely to be that stupid? Yeah.
No, not necessarily. I think that it's kind of a lottery. It's kind of like what Sam Harris says in a way of like you can't. It's something that like yeah it's something I shouldn't be proud of. My intelligence is not something I earned or did. Now my education is, but my intelligence is not. I can't really be proud of being intelligent, just like I shouldn't be proud of being white. I didn't do anything to deserve it. I was just born white. I was born intelligent. I'm not
I see. I
I
really don't
feel myself
understand that.
sounding arrogant
No,
because
I
I don't
understand
think
what you're
I'm like
saying.
the most intelligent person in the world, but obviously I'm fairly intelligent person. You know what I mean? Like I'm not,
I understand what you're saying.
a
I like
dullard. You know?
you're not flexing. I understand. But like
Yeah.
I'm just really confused how like I can kind of understand what you're saying. I think there are factors of both, but I think for the most part, you know, your personality, your intelligence, everything that makes you you are as an individual, I think that is formed by your environment. And I don't just mean your environment as like the neighborhood you live in, the state you live in, the country you live in, but like, what raises you, what makes you a person throughout your formative years. That's what makes people individuals, and that's what makes like I don't really
No,
see how
I
like
think it's a common. No, I think it's a combination of both. So if I didn't have the hardware,
there are a lot of geniuses with
I'm
stupid parents, stupid past
well.
generations.
Well, no, no, absolutely, and I don't think, I don't know to what extent intelligence is genetically passed. Even I'm just saying, like when I was born with a certain parameters of biological hardware, just like everyone else, and some hardware is better than others. So environmentally, my mother and father, I was lucky enough to be born into a family that they actually nurtured that intelligence. So I ended up not a complete douchebag
I mean,
or
you can take
failure
the
at life. You know what I
Kardashian or
mean?
the Hilton families for good examples of this. Like the Hilton family created a massive hotel industry and became
Hmm.
incredibly financially successful. And then her daughter's famous for what? being
Being
being the
famous, I
being the
guess.
daughter.
Right.
Same with the
Yeah.
Kardashians. Like you had an incredibly successful lawyer in that case, and then the daughters are just famous for the sake of being famous. You know,
Right.
um, and so it's
But that's what I'm
like
saying. No matter how much, and Hill, I don't know her personally, obviously, but Paris Hilton to me comes off as kind of a dumb person. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So to me, if she truly is a dumb, maybe she's not. Maybe that's her persona, and secretly, she's a genius behind closed doors or whatever. But
Doubtful.
just for an example, let's just say that she's as dumb as she comes off of. So no matter what the resources, no matter what the education, she is lacking in some hardware.
But
You
her
know what I'm
but, but her
saying?
but her parents were smart enough to build a incredibly successful multi-million dollar hotel industry.
Well, again, I don't know the facts behind. I'm not saying I'm not even making the argument that intelligence is passed down. Like if you have smart parents, you have a smart kid. I'm making the argument that intelligence is biological. So whether it's passed down genetically or it's just everybody who's intelligent was lucky that their neurons grew in the way that they did. It is a biological component. Like you have the hardware, and then the education is the soft. Like your environment's the software, but you can only run. It's like a computer. Like I can only run so good a game on my computer because it's the hardware. You know what I mean?
Do you think
So
that
some
success is
people,
tied to intelligence?
no, I don't. I don't
Like
think that.
financial
I
and like
actually
life
think I actually think intelligent people actually overall can end up less successful than people that are just able to kind of like um be good at one thing. And
hmm
intelligent people tend to self-reflect more and be more aware of things, and I think that can hinder them, and not
hmm
always, obviously, but like, no, I don't think that, especially in America, no, you do not have to be intelligent to be successful. I wish that were true, but it's not. No.
Well, I don't really wish that were true. I think it's an interesting question. I think people should be able to be successful in whatever way they, choose to.
Yeah, maybe I
If
said that
people,
wrong.
I think I get
I
what you
wish
mean
so
though.
many dumb people that weren't able to, yeah, like
I
the
would
whole
just
thing,
say
stop
I
making
wish
dumb people
more.
famous, kind of thing, but yeah,
Well,
right,
maybe
right,
some of that, but I think for the most part, more just make more intelligent people famous. You know,
right, yeah,
not
there you
just
go,
people who are
right.
just gonna parrot whatever they hear.
I
You know,
love that one author. I forget what his name is, but he said, stop fucking people that don't read. Like he's like, if you go home from the bar and they don't have any books, don't fuck them.
yeah. And here's the thing, like, I was listening to Jim Norton's radio show with Dave Rubin today, and they were talking about the differences in a lot of like late night talk show hosts and whatnot. And I wish we had less Jimmy Kimmels and more Bill Maher's. It's kind of the conclusion I've come to because I respect the hell out of
Yeah,
Bill Maher. Bill
I
Maher
do.
is like Bill Maher is like the most rational person I've ever seen host a TV show, and he's not fake.
Yeah.
And
No, he's not fake.
Jimmy Kimmel is the fakest motherfucker on television. He does. I don't think he honestly believes half the shit he says. If he does, man, he you should have heard him at the freaking Oscars last night. He seriously just went down the list. Like he read the Democratic Party platform and just preached it to the country over the Oscars, and it was just brutal to watch. Um, so like there are those sort of things, especially when it comes to like right wing talk shows. You'll see guys like Alex Jones, who like people argue with me, say he's not right wing, and I think it's pretty fucking clear that he's like a
Oh,
very
he is
hardcore.
so right wing, dude.
I don't
He's
think
so
he's
right
really.
wing.
Yeah, he is, and he is. I think at least fundamentally he is, but he also has some left wing things about him. I think he is pro marijuana. I do think ultimately he is pro choice, as far as I've heard. I don't. He's not a Christian. He's an atheist. He's a conspiracy theorist. He really didn't get famous for politics originally. Like when I watched his show in high school, it was mostly just about conspiracy theories like aliens and shit. And then for some reason
Right, right.
around the Trump campaign, he decided to start getting like overtly mainstream political. It was kind of a strange transition to watch, and that's kind of why I stopped watching him. But I never really watched him to like really take it in as like factual information or anything like that. It was more just kind of fun to go down this dude's rabbit holes with conspiracy theories and
I mean,
whatnot.
I view him as a pure entertainer.
He is an
I mean,
entertainer, yeah.
I know that people take him seriously and stuff like that,
Some
but
people do.
I don't. Yeah, no, I know some people do, right? But I'm sorry, but he's a charlatan. Basically, he's just making money off these people. I mean,
Mhm. Yeah, but so, see, you have like these sort of people. Like I think one of the biggest problems right now is the conflation between journalism and activism that's going on. You see so many people that prop themselves up as respected journalists and whatnot, and for the most part, they're really just political activists because they don't actually really record anything. They don't actually go out and find new stories for the most part. They just sit there and bitch on websites, and they basically have a blog gets put out in fucking newspapers, and it's 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 just stupid. I see it all the time, and it's a problem of both the left and the right. There's a lot of times where it's like they're not going to cover something unless it specifically fits a certain narrative. Like they don't. Just like CNN isn't going to cover every shooting that happens in Chicago, the Fox News is not going to cover every single time there's some sort of violent incident at a church or something like that. Like they don't necessarily want the Christians to get
I
bad.
get that, but again, I think there's a false equivalency. I see Fox News as way more of a propaganda arm for the Republican platform than.
What's up, man?
By the way, I was listening to your discussion. It's pretty interesting. You're making a lot of good points, but would you agree that conservative YouTubers on YouTube are not also doing the same thing? Like, especially when I mean conservative YouTubers, I mean like Crowder, Ben Shapiro.
Oh, absolutely. Crowder's an activist. Ben Shapiro's definitely an activist. He speaks at colleges.
I mean, like, every time when I see these types of videos, like I always see this on the Related. Every time it's related to Ben Shapiro, where it's like Ben Shapiro completely, utterly destroys. Ben Shapiro reacts to this. I mean, it's like I've seen this so many fucking times.
They're definitely activists, and I think even if somebody wouldn't agree that guys like Crowder and Shapiro are political activists and actually see, so I definitely don't think anybody sees Steven Crowder as a journalist, especially because he makes his
I see him as an entertainer as well. Like I'm extremely anti-Trump, but even these people that say, you'll see these videos like Trump supporters are dumb. It's just like what the Crowder does. You can go out in the street and you can make your point look good when you find random people on the street. I mean, it's easy.
I like, to be honest, when it comes to Ben Shapiro versus Crowder, I prefer Crowder a bit more because I think that Crowder would fucking beat Ben Shapiro in a heartbeat in an argument, because I just see Crowder as one of these individuals that he goes... Like, I wouldn't want to have an argument with Crowder because I know that Crowder would utterly fucking destroy me in an argument.
Well, he's much more. He is very pragmatic in all of his arguments, and it's very hard to argue with a lot of things he'll point out. He's not like he doesn't give the sort of Ben Shapiro philosophical constitutionalist answers to things. He actually explains with statistics why he has the position he has. He's a very pragmatic thinker. I think that's why that is. I generally think that Ben Shapiro is perhaps a bit more intelligent, but I think his arrogance often betrays him. I think Ben Shapiro is probably one of the cockiest, most arrogant motherfuckers in the world. He has the nastiest smirk on his face all the time, and he thinks he's literally right about everything. And there's a number of things I disagree with Ben Shapiro on. If there's one question I ever get to ask Ben Shapiro, it's going to be about this one time on his radio show where he was talking about gay camp counselors and why he wasn't necessarily against them, but he wouldn't want his kid to have a gay camp counselor. And I said, if that's true, then really why would you let any adult female around your daughter or adult male around your son? Because like, how do you know who's gay and who's not? It's like, are we going to screen people for whether like? I would love to ask him about that because honestly, I really wonder if he just. I really wonder if he just like fucked up when he was thinking.
To be honest, right, I don't think it's Ben Shapiro's fault or Jordan Peterson's fault that it's like this, but thanks to the internet, right, these certain YouTubers kind of treat them like gods in an essence. When you see YouTube titles saying Ben Shapiro or fucking Jordan Peterson owns this complete utter leftist. I mean, it's like, and it's like
thug life.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like with how the whole blood sports.
I don't even watch that shit. I unsubscribe to everybody that's participating in that shit. Fuck that. I cannot stand it.
Yeah. One thing too, I want to make a point about these videos where they say that this person, even if it's not Ben Shapiro, even whether it's left or right, when people say, oh, this person utterly destroys this person. And I think that I get
it's clickbait. It's
Yeah, it is
clickbait.
clickbait, and I get so tired of people judging whether someone got destroyed or not based on like
Crowd
not
reaction.
not just the argument. It's like should be the substance of the argument. Even if someone's timid and can't get their point across that well, if their point is right, they're the ones that destroyed the argument. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're the
but
ones
you know
that
why
have
they do
won.
that? Do you know why they do that? Because those people that make those ones are on. They have this allegiance problem. Where
Mhm.
say like if I'm allegiance to conservatives and I make videos like conservatives utterly fucking own leftists to the ground or vice versa, I'm doing it to basically reinsure my audience who have a confirmation bias to
No, you're
keep
right.
clicking on the videos, and
But
it's
you obviously don't have an American. I don't know where you're from, but where are you like UK or
I'm
else?
English.
Okay. Yeah, so here in America though, that's a big problem, as you probably know if you follow the news, is
Yeah.
what that's like in places like where you're from. But here, this is a huge problem where nobody pays attention to the substance of the argument, or nobody's looking at policy. Everybody's just has such blind allegiance to their tribe, and it's just utterly maddening.
You're talking about gun control, right?
I'm talking about the United States. Yeah, just
Well,
I
yeah,
mean, I've been
gun
talking about
control in the
everybody,
United
really,
Yeah.
but
Well, yeah. Here's the thing. I think that when it comes to these sort of shootings and attacks, if we're going to stop them, there's three tiers of solutions. We need some forms of gun control, and I think we agreed on virtually everyone we talked about. I think we even disagree. I think we even commonly disagreed on the ones they both found to be sort of abhorrent, like the raise of the age of 21 and everything. So there's the some forms of gun control, some forms of increased security, but then there's also societal issues. And I'm not just advocating for more people to go into private schools and whatnot. It's just that generally private schools do have lower rates of violence, and I don't think that there's been a shooting at a private school. Like when I say private school, I'm not talking about colleges and whatnot. I'm talking about high schools,
yeah,
elementary
I know what
schools,
you're
middle
talking about,
school.
right?
Yeah.
I don't think there has been. I was looking when you were talking about. I was looking at the data a little bit. I don't think there has been. There may have been one.
Mhm.
Certainly, it's mostly public schools, even if there was one.
I think it's a failure of the public school system for a third. As far as the solutions go, like I said, there's three different types of solutions we need here, and this comes down to the societal solution. What you were talking about with toxic masculinity and everything, how males are obviously more violent than women, and that there is a culture around raising children, young men, to be a certain way, and I
Well,
think.
it's basically like like you like punch your problem before actually like thinking about it emotionally. In
I
this most
definitely
simplistic
know that
terms,
culture exists. That culture does exist.
right?
Especially with like baby boomer conservative parents, it is a very, very sort of rough and tough philosophy they have when it comes to
Right,
raising
like
children.
toughen up and and
Yeah, and it's very easy
when
for
actually
someone to say that when they're like, like there are kids that go to school every day fearing for their physical safety, and I think that's what really, people want to talk about,
right.
bullies are just a part of life. Everybody needs to, toughen up, stop being so triggered and everything. I think that's very easy to say from the perspective of somebody who never went through something like that. And I think when it comes down to like physical bullying, people who, if they were adults, we would consider this to be assault. That kind of
Well,
thing
yeah,
going on
absolutely,
regularly.
right. It's
Those sort of kids should not be in the public school system.
Listen, it's intellectually lazy for parents the way it is toughen up, because it's lazy, because it's complicated. Bullying is complicated. Children are complicated. Okay, it's just like my friend Don. I always argue about like spanking. Like he thinks like the solution is kids don't get spanked enough, and that's why they're so bad. And I'm like, look, I don't think that someone who spanks their child is a monster. I'm not calling them like I'm not saying that, but data has shown that when you spank, it doesn't really work. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Can I just add something as an outsider, right, to the United States? When I first visited the United States, when I went into New York, and I know New York is not a good example of getting a proper and American taste, but maybe it might be just a New York thing, but like the moment I went into the United States, I got a completely different kind of attitude culture. That I felt nowhere else. That was basically nowhere else. I never had this kind of attitude when I went into Europe or anything. But there
Is it
seems
like an
to be
attitude
this
of tension?
No, no, there's this attitude of high competitiveness that you have, as an American, you have to prove yourself to
Hmm.
be, a successful, well, not like a successful individual, but like if you're going to make it big, you have to go all for it, basically. And I basically, every time when I'd see people walking past me or just, doing their own thing, they seem to have this kind of very competitive, fixed attitude with them. Like they were
Like
they
they
were
don't
being.
communicate much with strangers, you mean? Like
Yes, and they were doing their own thing, and they were, and it felt like if I was to live in America, I would have to adapt to this kind of scary, kind of competitive lifestyle that pretty much every citizen in America has to go with.
I mean, I would say
Yeah.
it's a good representation of America. I would say that it's probably magnified and intensified in places like New York. I mean, New York tends to be the East Coast people tend to be more rude to one another than like say the
Much more
South.
business related
But
people rather than like,
yeah, much more like to
the
the
West
point.
Coast is all
But
entertainment
then
and
you have
stuff.
the South. My aunt and uncle live down there where everybody has the semblance of niceness. But to me, it's all you can. It feels very contrived. Like you're not saying sir or ma'am or being polite because you want to be polite to your fellow man. It's just because it's expected of you. You know what I mean? To me,
Uh,
it's contrived and it's kind of fake. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
people go to Boston and New York to become successful in business. People go to California to become successful in entertainment and things like that. So like there's different cultures throughout the United States, and
Yeah.
some places are going to be have that less competitive feel than others. But I do generally know
But
what
they
you mean
all
because
do. Yes, they all do have that. All of America is very. Yes, we are raised to be basically like. Yeah, it's very social. It's like social Darwinism. I mean, in a way.
yeah,
I think it's also more than that though. Like you'll notice that like people in other countries, like you walk by them, you make eye contact, and it's not considered
yeah.
weird or rude
I
or
mean,
anything.
you got to be I mean, you got to be thankful that your culture isn't like Japan, because I'm surprised. And technically, in some places like Japan and South Korea, there is higher amounts of suicide rates than anywhere else in the world because Asian culture, you have to basically, if you're not successful, you're disrespecting your entire
Yep.
family and your honor.
Hmm.
Imagine that as a culture, you have to be raised upon. Like if you're just like a basic fat slob that would
Right.
be considered as a
Yeah,
loser,
they don't
you're
respect it
basically
at all.
you'd be
Hmm.
basically shamed by your entire family
Hmm.
by basically for not providing
This is generally
basic
speaking, of
success.
course, but like yeah, like there that culture definitely does exist. Like old school
Yeah.
Asian traditionalism is still widely respected, whereas like American traditionalism is most oftenly mocked rather than respected. People don't generally respect American traditions, but over in Japan, we have that sort of thing exists because like they've always been that way, and they're always
Oh
going to
yeah,
be that way because they respect that way.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is like when I go to places such as America, I seem to get this kind of like attitude that everybody has to prove their worth. Like nobody wants to be in America, in my opinion, to be like basically a fade away nothing person.
Right. Right.
Somebody that doesn't contribute to society, somebody that doesn't like who isn't remembered in history. Like nobody, I bet no one in America would want to have that attitude where I just want to be left on my own thing and I don't care if society remembers me throughout my time on this life.
Yeah, you'd be
I don't.
surprised. You'd be surprised in America. There's a lot of people that are on it, like whether they're doomsday preppers or conspiracy theorists, whatever their like whatever their reason is. There's a lot of people who like to live off the grid and just be totally on their own and not
Yeah.
even
Yeah. But you know
participate in
what though?
American
What he's
society.
saying is generally true though about Americans in general. In general, I mean,
Nobody
there
wants. Yeah.
are people that don't want to be. They do want to be left alone, or they don't really care about being remembered. But generally, Americans do.
The American dream generally is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
the American dream or whatever.
Yeah,
Tell you what,
to make
I
an
sell
impact.
insurance.
Yeah.
I sell insurance for a living, and insurance is one of those rare customer service opportunities or jobs in which the customer is not always right. Now, obviously, I can't be rude or anything like that, but it's kind of shown me how entitled Americans are. I mean, they just really feel entitled that they should get the best deal, or they should be like, I should just be kissing their ass. And it's like, no, you have a shit home. I don't actually want to insure it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even want to insure your home.
You could say that they are the best types of capitalists out there on the planet.
Well, yeah.
Like if you were like
proven.
If you were like, this is the thing, right? I know this is just a single example, but have you heard of a guy called Wizard of Cause?
No,
I actually used to subscribe to him. I used to.
Yeah, he is a bit of a. Well, I've kind of lost respect for him because I did a.
I definitely have.
I did a bit of a shitty thing to him where I basically he lost respect for me when I basically cheapskated him on Patreon, where I basically pledged money to him so I could get onto one of his streams, and then I deleted my pledge the moment I just left the stream. So I didn't pay him a single money, and he felt kind of cheapskated on that. And for some reason, he told me to go fuck myself on camera.
Wow.
I mean, dude, that's just Patreon. I've done this to many types of people, and I've had no shit.
Well, you mentioned the internet blood sports for a second. One of the reasons I stopped respecting Wizard of Cause, and the thing is, when the whole thing was going on with Kraut and T and the Discord server and everything, I watched Jeff Holliday's explanation of why and how exactly he was involved in that whole thing, and Andy Worski released a few messages from Wizard of Cause, who is encouraging Andy to keep quiet about everybody's involvement in that Discord server from Kraut and T. And I've really lost a lot of respect when I found out that he did that, because I really thought he was a lot more honest than that. And for the most part, again, we're talking about an entertainer. The guy's not expected to be an honest journalist or anything. He has no obligation to his viewers to be 100% honest. But I found it to be incredibly deceptive and just betraying of his character. And I really sickened me. So, like,
to be fair,
I also unsubscribed from Andy Worski and all those people.
Yeah, when it comes to people like Nick, he's a bit of I've got like a bit of a strange relationship with this guy. I can't hate the guy because I kind of like watching him like on the Saints. But
the Saints.
I acknowledge that he's got problems, because he's not only got alcoholic problems. I don't know if you've caught his skin. His skin is literally becoming toxic due to all the alcohol he's consuming, and I don't think he's going to live that long. I think in the future he's going to have liver problems due to the amount of consumption of alcohol he always has on his streams. But this guy, he is one of those types of guys that is like a cringy kind of American connoisseur type of guys.
Yeah, he thinks he's a wine connoisseur.
He literally thinks he's a connoisseur.
Yeah.
He may not admit that he is a connoisseur, but he has the kind of attitude of one, and that to me is a bit. Yeah, I don't kind of respect people.
Yeah, he talks with a certain tone in his voice where he just thinks like, "Oh, I know it all and I got all the answers." And I kind of related to Obama's way of speaking a little bit. He takes these dramatic pauses and speaks in a certain tone that just sounds smooth and informative, and like he knows exactly what he's talking about. And I kind of always had that criticism of him, but I really just kind of associated to him being a bit arrogant. But honestly, I think for the most part, he's kind of hiding the fact that he doesn't really know as much about what he's actually talking about. The biggest thing that I actually got into him for was, first of all, I used to watch Jeff Holiday when he was doing like a lot of more of his like takedown videos and everything. And I found those amusing. So I became aware of Wizard of Cause after those two did a stream with Sargon of Akkad. And and I did not have a good impression of Wizard of Cause the first time, because it was in the stream where he was just spurging out about Trump. I mean, absolutely spurging out, like screaming at the top of his lungs. It was just disturbing to watch. It was like somebody be that angry, it's just over an election, you know. And
I had to pop out for a second. Sorry.
Well, you got to remember, he said in his past that he used to be part of labor organizations within the East Coast. So
Yeah, and he's
always
also
been a kind
he's
of
also an activist too. He's actually spoken in front of courts about male rights and whatnot when it comes to divorce and everything. Apparently, I didn't know he was actually that politically active. I thought he just made videos, but apparently, like he's been an
he
advocate.
kind of reminds me of a guy called David Charette, if you know who I'm talking about.
Not quite.
Yeah, no, Spinosaurus.
Oh, I've
That
heard that
guy.
name.
Like, does anyone, I mean, besides that those groups take the idea of like male rights seriously? Now, I know that there are problems. I have a daughter, and I'm in a separated relationship, and the woman is given, I think, undue favor. You know what I'm saying? Most definitely. And in divorces, I've never been divorced, but I've certainly known people have been divorced, and it seems like in those cases as well, women have been given undue favor, for no other reason, it seems, than they're the woman. But as a whole in society, I mean, men are pretty much on top. I mean, you know what I mean? We're pretty much
That,
on
as
top.
true as that is, it's also the thing is when it comes to civil courts between for relationships and whatnot, men do get fucked over a lot. And I'm not saying it's
They do.
necessarily a
And I'm
male
not.
rights issue. I think ultimately, first of all, I think it'd be great if the state was just not involved in marriage to begin with. I think you could do it all
Well,
through private attorneys. I do not think that it needs to be it needs to be a union determined by the government or anything like that. I think you could handle divorce cases totally in private courts, private lawyers and everything like that. I don't understand why it's like this, the way it's structured the way it is to begin with. So I think that would solve most of the issues for both men and women when it comes to how they're judged in courts. Like obviously I think women probably have, I don't really know how to put this, but women are not often the victimizers of men. Women are most often the victims of men. And
yeah,
so
no,
like
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's what I mean. Like, I just find hard. I find it hard to take people seriously. Like these male rights
I
activists,
understand why, but like
hardcore
I care
ones. You know
about
what
I
I
care
mean? Like,
about everybody's rights at the end of the day. I
I
understand what
care
you're
about
saying.
fairness at the end of the day,
Yeah.
right? I care about
It
fairness.
doesn't seem as urgent of a matter as it is for most women's issues when it comes to how they're dealt with in courts.
Exactly. I feel like exactly, and that's yeah, right.
Yeah,
Like
I
pretty much.
understand
Like
that.
I find it kind of like really you're worrying about this. Like we can talk about fairness without having to like okay because there's women's rights now we gotta have male rights to. I mean that's not fairness. I mean you
I
can't
think
just
what it
prop
really comes
something up
down to, I
because
think there's a few issues that I agree with them on, and it mostly comes down to child custody rights, and because I think it's a fundamental human right to have at least partial custody of your child, unless of course you are in any way abusive. Then I don't agree
no.
you should have
Well,
any
I can
custody.
I can agree with that because I listen. I'm in that situation. Like
Yeah.
smoking
yeah.
crack in front of her terrible and she doesn't even smoke crack or anything like that
Can I just
but
say
she's a
something?
bad mother. Go
Yeah,
ahead. Yeah.
yeah. About the men's rights things. The one things that I highly disagree with, and which I find pretty kind of like you're basically you're turning men into victims like women are. Is the point where they say that there needs to be more men's shelters when the man was kicked out of the house. I'm sorry, but if I was kicked out of
I
the house,
also
I
agree
would
with
not.
that though.
I
There
wouldn't want to
does need to be
be. I
more men's
wouldn't want to be in a
shelters.
room full of other loser men. I wouldn't want to be in that. Like
Right.
this is.
I don't
In
know.
essence,
I actually do think there need to be more shelters overall to begin with, but there are a lot of homeless shelters that do discriminate against men, and we just sort of tolerate it, and we wonder why the
Well,
majority of homeless people are
hold
adult
on though.
men.
Is it discrimination though if there's a very real problem? Okay, like you just said, men are often victimizing women. Okay, women
Yeah, but
don't.
we're
It
talking about
does. Listen,
homelessness now. That's
I
different.
understand. Right. No, it's different. But women, I think, due to like we were talking about men being more violent and perpetrating crimes and stuff like that. Like I think women do kind of need their own shelters where
They can have their own
they
shelters. I'm not
don't
saying they
have
can't
to
have their own
be
shelters.
around men. You know what I
That's
mean?
fine. That's fine. I totally agree. But like, why also not have more male shelters? And I'm not saying the government even needs to do it. I would just encourage more private companies to open up male shelters. Like, I mean, there's plenty of companies that could afford to
I
do something
mean,
like that.
or just shelters in general, like co-ed. I
Yeah,
don't know. I don't know.
I don't care
I
what it
guess what I'm
is.
saying is
You know,
having
Yeah.
explicitly women's shelters. I don't see a need for explicitly men's shelters. I see either co-ed shelters or women's shelters. You know what I mean? Because men are not being victimized by women. They're not being raped.
I say you
You
could
know,
have
like
all three. I think it'd be
I
fine to
mean,
have all three.
you could have all three, and I wouldn't like be out in the streets protesting the men's shelters. But I'm saying I don't really see a need for it.
Well,
You
the
know what I'm saying?
majority of homeless
Yeah,
people in
look,
America are
guys,
men.
guys, say like if I was a shelter owner, right, and I took people in, right, and there were two people that came up to me. Who would you ethically think I should take in? Should I take in the woman who's been kicked out of the house with her 3 children that are on the streets, or should I take in this lonely guy who is a drunk loser who's got alcohol
Well,
and
you have to
poisoning
take the woman in the
problems?
family. You definitely
Yeah,
take the woman in the
exactly.
family. So I understand
Right.
why most shelters are primarily focused on women and children. I understand and agree with that. I just think that everybody, if we're like one of the things we stand for in this group is equal opportunity, right? So why should not everybody else have the equal opportunity to have shelter over their head no matter what? I don't think it's just like we should just say, okay, the men can go live off in the streets. We can expect them to get jobs and whatnot. We were just talking about toxic masculinity and everything. Like, is that not sort of a reinstillment of that we expect men to be able to handle themselves when they're homeless better than we expect the women to? Everything like that.
No, that's not what. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I explicitly men's shelters. I see a need for co-ed shelters where men can go. I mean, homeless men certainly have a place to go.
Yeah, and how many
You know what I
families have
mean?
been separated by that idea too? How many fathers have been separated from their wives and their children when they were all put out on the street, not having a home, and and then the dad has to go live out in the street while his
Well, right.
kids
There should
and
be
his
more
wife.
co-ed shelters, and then you obviously need abused women. I
Yeah.
mean, women's shelters primarily exist because women. There's a reason they're being abused. I mean, and
Well,
they
they're really not
leave their
women's
husband.
shelters. They're women and children's
Well, they're
shelters. So there's a
yeah,
difference.
exactly. I mean, you're right. Yeah, but like yes, but like I said, there doesn't need to be, in my opinion, men's shelters like just for men, where just men go. Like there just needs to be
I don't see
co-ed.
why you
Guys.
can't have it though.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
In essence, guys, all I believe, right, is that just technically we have to keep the genders the same. I'm very much against the feminization of men. I find it like if you're creating a weak, cucked generation of men, right, outsiders that are not cucked can easily come in and then, basically breed with the women that we're destined to have. I'm seeing this very much, and like this is the thing. Even black men in the United States are admitting this, right? They're noticing that there is a massive feminization of white men in the United States, and this is why, in essence, they kind of blame male faggotry as a white man's creation, because in essence they're not wrong. Because it's just this whole creation of feminization of men, in my opinion, is to me really toxic.
I think it goes a little bit both ways though. Like my thing is, I don't think men that there is a certain feminization of men that is going on in America, and I think it's a consequence ultimately of just the fact that we are one of the safest cultures you can fucking live in. We're the most modernized first world country in the world, and for the most part, you're safer here, even if you're homeless, than you are in middle class areas in a lot of other countries.
Oh yeah.
Like we're
Oh
a
yeah, for
pretty
sure.
isolated culture.
Yeah,
We're a
for
very
sure.
small
But this is
population
the thing. If you're basically importing immigrants that don't have those types of raised civilized values that you kind of proclaim, they're basically going to take over.
Yeah,
This is what's happening in the UK right now. This is basically I heard a study that almost 50% of white men, white teenage boys in the UK identify as bisexual. That to me is a very worrying trait. I see, because in essence, if you're a bisexual man, you're more likely to be a feminized man. Like if you're taking it up the ass, like a fucking like how a bitch should be under a dick, then I mean it's just
I just want to make one thing clear. I get what you're saying. the English are much more abrasive in the way they speak than like I totally understand where you're coming from, but like in America, holy fuck, your mic would have been silenced on national news already. Like I totally get what you're
Oh
saying,
yeah.
man. But
Oh
like
yeah, yeah, for
I
sure.
understand that there's a brashness to the way the English speak. So yeah,
No. I'm telling you, here, mate. Here in the UK, it's worse with censorship. I mean, you've got the whole police force that have got nothing to do because crime here in the UK has gone so down. But the police have literally, you've left a police force that are just basically finding stuff to do.
Sounds
And
like
what they'll
small
do
town
is,
America.
yeah, and this is and this is what you'll do if you were to post. If I was to post this stuff on Facebook, on my
yeah,
Facebook
you could go to
timeline,
jail.
I could do time for that.
Holy
Well,
shit.
we're streaming on YouTube, by the way, right now. but
Oh, you're streaming on YouTube right now.
yeah, on my channel, I have like 6 subscribers. I don't think you need to worry about it.
Oh,
But
I see. Oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's my personal.
Don't
yeah,
worry.
It's literally like I've
yeah, I
just
don't
started
really
my
care.
channel.
YouTube is pretty fine in essence because you can say whatever you want. You can say "stump niggers" 50 times and you won't get banned. But
Yeah.
I'm
I'm not trying
the
to
thing
police
is,
your language or anything. I get what you're saying, but I think the way we would interpret it, like I think feminization is ultimately a bad word for it. And I think using terms like cucked and whatnot to describe it. I totally get what you're saying because I understand what you mean by it. But the thing is, like there is two problems at the same time. We've always traditionally in America had a very overly masculine culture when it comes to like the expectations of men, but there's also always been sort of unrealistic expectations for women as well. And it's not that we have like an anti-gay culture or anything like that, but traditionally we have. These days we don't so much anymore. I wouldn't really call that the feminization of men. If 50% of the men in your country are bisexual and they're more likely to, marry males than they are to marry women, like I could see how that's going to affect birth rates, and that could be a
bisexual
problem.
men, well, actually, there is a study that if you're a bisexual girl or boy, you're more likely to go with the straight option than the gay option. To be honest, you've got like a 90% chance of going the straight option and rather going with the gay option. But yeah, but that still doesn't excuse the fact that if 50% of teenage boys here in the UK identify as bisexual, then
I think bisexual is like first of all, like I do believe that many people are born gay, but I think less people are born bisexual than the ones that are sort of like culturally adapted to bisexuality. And I don't think many people could deny that that exists. I think we all know a lot of people who have experimented with bisexuality, but are not in any way. You could not actually say that they are born bisexual. Like there's a difference. There's a lot of people who experiment with same gender sex, but they're not actually bisexual in the fact that like they actually want to
Well,
marry someone of the same gender.
sexuality is a spectrum, though. There's nobody who's truly right 100% one way or the other. Well, maybe
I think there are
that's
some people
or
who
that
are.
there are some people, but I mean, it's very like sexuality is a spectrum, and most like straight males fall like very, very far. Like if straight is on the right and gay is on the left, they're going to be way on towards the straight, I mean, option. And then there's people that kind of fall in between, and there's people that are going to be pretty much gay. They find the concept of a vagina disgusting. You know what I mean? Like just how I would find the concept of a dick disgusting.
Yeah.
But I mean, sexuality is a strange thing. It's a spectrum, and it is enforced culturally. I think that more people. I mean, I can see that where people will identify with themselves as bisexual because maybe, like you said, they're experimenting. Maybe they're somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, and they're not truly
well,
bisexual, but they're not sure where they fall.
Well, I hate to admit it, but you may disagree with me on this, but I think mostly because of that number is so high is because of the social conditioning, I'd say. Because these teenage boys who end up in social groups, especially middle class social groups, I'm talking about the middle class boys, I'm not talking about the working class boys, because working class boys are more macho,
Hmm.
types of guys than the middle
They are
class.
here in the United States as well.
Yeah,
That was
the
one thing I
more
was going to
middle,
say.
the
It's
more,
sort of a
the more, the
consequence
more
of
middle,
wealth.
the more middle class you are, in terms of your friend circle, the more likely you'll have that kind of notion that you'll experiment with your sexuality a lot, and yeah, it's very prevalent there.
You know, one thing I think this kind of relates to is I think it's kind of sort of always been that way. You know, what war was ever declared by anybody young enough to go to the war? You know, like it's really kind of the weaker men have sort of actually always been the upper class ones that are sort of in charge. You know, like you don't see many politicians picking up guns to go fight in the front lines.
No, you don't
You
see them
know,
sending their sons and daughters out there either, really.
no, absolutely not. It's all like you know, war is for the poor. It's not for the rich. That's the reality.
Yeah.
You know, you
I
know,
mean, actually, people who criticize Trump for calling him General Bone Spurs or whatever, I actually speaks. I think there is a hypocrisy. He's being hypocritical because he's saying these things about the military and he didn't serve himself. But I'm actually more forgiving with Trump on that than a lot of people that are anti-Trump would be, because it's like just what you said is truth. He's a fucking rich guy, man. Like, of course he didn't go to war.
none of
You know
them
what I'm
do.
saying? Like, his fucking, of course, his dad. I mean, this isn't just Trump. This is fucking how many people in Vietnam didn't go.
This
'cause
is
their
the
daddy
this is
had
the
money.
this is the families of the establishment. Period.
I mean, exactly. It's just like, so there are Trump on,
And, you know, like
than
and like
that. I mean,
Trump's not necessarily part of like any sort of political dynasty. He's not part of that establishment in a sense, but he's part of
no, but
he's part of
he's,
the
you know,
he's part of the social like fabric of the country. Honestly, like he's he's a great hand in the market for a long time and shit like that. You know, dude practically built.
You know what I
Bush
hear,
in
but
New York.
never. You know what I never hear about compliments about Trump at all, which I find him to be a kind of like. I've got a lot of disagreements with Trump. I don't think he's gone far enough with his nationalist policies a lot. But the one thing I would give him compliments is that he's got experience in business and he treats his presidency like a business in essence, and that's what I
You
kind
can
of
blame
admire about
Congress
him.
for a lot of that, for the nationalist policies not being pushed so far, because like America is the only multicultural society that is against civic nationalism. It is fucking bizarre to me. Like you're not allowed to be any sort of nationalist in politics. It's a dirty word. You can't say it. It's just like, you know, you call somebody a
or an
nationalist.
or
It's
an
like calling somebody a
atheist. You
Nazi.
can't be an atheist either
Oh
in
yeah,
politics.
I mean, yeah, that's
In
definitely not.
American politics, you really can't. Not even on the left, you
I
can't.
Well,
think
I think
Bernie
it takes.
Sanders,
Well, to
Bernie
be
Even
honest,
Sanders
even the
guys,
it's
getting
getting, that is getting like better, but even Democrats pay lip service to God. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
but to be
because
honest, guys,
nationalism is sort of
I think
universally
in
condemned.
I think in
Sorry.
order to change that, guys, I think you just need somebody with the balls to basically change the way things are. Because, you know, they said time. They said like if we were to go back in time 70 years ago, there was, you know, back in time then they said that oh, a black man couldn't be president, but you know, look at it now. Like it's the same kind of arguments. It just takes somebody with the will to basically just smash that notion, I believe. But
Yeah,
no,
like
I definitely agree. Actually, I think it's fun. Trump is the first atheist president, honestly. And you know what I mean? It's kind of,
I don't think you can really call
and
him an
who,
atheist. I think at the very most, and like I know that a lot of, like there's not a great distinction between the terms because most atheists are agnostics, but I think you can
right.
loosely call him an agnostic. I don't think he really ever
I honestly
considers religion
I
or
just
not.
don't even think he cares,
Yeah, I don't
honestly.
think he's ever
Right.
put
I mean,
thought
he
into it.
just, right. I mean, and I say that kind of jokingly, but I mean, I
It's
really
sort of
don't
true.
know. I don't think Trump is a Christian. He pays lip service because for votes, basically. He's not.
He ran for the Republican Party.
Well, right, you have to, especially in the
Yeah.
Republican Party. I mean, it's when the Republican Party married with the evangelical white Christians in the 80s with Reagan. I mean, that it's fundamentally changed the party. I mean, drastically.
Yeah,
And I don't know, but I mean, my problem with Trump is, I mean, I have a lot of problems with Trump, but my main problem with Trump is he's essentially just, I don't think the man has any honest bones in his body. I think he's just a complete, I think it's very dangerous. It's very
he's an
dangerous that he,
opportunist.
He's an
would you say?
opportunist, and I think that as more and more comes out, I mean, he still hasn't enforced any sanctions on Russia that were unanimously voted on by Congress, bipartisan. I mean, it seems very quid pro pro that he's an asset. I mean, it's in someone who certainly disagrees with my country a lot. I still consider myself a patriot. I love this country. I love America. And I definitely see Russia as an enemy of the Western world. I mean, Vladimir Putin does not have our.
I disagree, but
I actually
the thing
totally
is,
agree with him on that.
well,
I think Russia's the greatest threat.
well, no. Russia's. I'm not saying Russia is like like it's got corruption, but if I was the U.S. president, which I'm not because I'm not American. If I was the U.S. president, I would try to make special relationships with Russia. I'd try to sever that old Cold War kind of tie that has been there since the start of the 50s, I'd say.
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with that sentiment, but I just don't think it's a reality. I don't think Vladimir Putin has any interest in doing anything that's good for us. I mean, even
no.
Not that
However,
it
however,
wouldn't.
what I
Yes,
will say-
it would be good if Putin we could be allies with Russia. I just don't think it's possible.
However, to say that Russia is a threat to the world, I think is highly exaggerated because I'd even say the same thing about China. Because their militaries, I know that Russia's had experience invading countries and stuff and you could say the whole Ukrainian war thing, it was a massive example of Russia stepping out of line. But in terms of military power, the United States could literally invade Russia.
Gosh,
yes.
And yes.
So could China. And they could invade China as well because literally the United States has got not only NATO as an ally, but it's also got the most powerful navy, most powerful air force.
Right.
It would be so strange for them to invade Russia now, though. After what 45 years of the Cold War, we never invaded Russia, but now, as the thing is, I'm
not advocating for invading Russia. By the way, I'm not.
My problem is Putin's philosophy. I don't know.
The reason why that didn't happen was because of nukes. Nuclear weapons. That was the main deterrence of any nation invading another. Was nuclear.
My main problem is I don't know where Putin stands ideologically on most things. I don't think he is a socialist or anything like that. But I know he's incredibly authoritarian, and I just don't really understand.
He's incredibly authoritarian, autocratic.
He's more of an oligarchy dictator, in my opinion.
He's very autocratic, and that's what scares me about Trump too. Is you see him praising these autocrats from around the world. I mean, the guy in the Philippines, I truly think that Trump kind of admires their power. You know what I mean?
I think he kind of sees them as a nationalist type of point because Russia. I think Putin is very good for Russia because he's basically keeping the nationalist sentiment in Russia very strong, and that's what I like.
I think that's true. I've always said that. I've always, when it comes to the whole Trump, Russian, Putin conspiracy and everything, I've always asked people one question to start it off with is what exact commonalities are there between Putin and Trump, especially between Russia and America are nothing alike, and it's sort of bizarre for me to think what exactly could they agree on, but it really is just the nationalism aspect that they agree upon.
Well, it doesn't but you missed the entire point of it. Doesn't matter what they agree on. Guys, it's not about ideology. Very little. I think very little about ideology. It's about money. It's about money and power.
Yeah, did you just see who stepped in, by the way? It was Darth Dawkins. You don't want to have a conversation with this guy because I know you guys are pretty much what I would call liberal atheists. This guy is literally an evangelist, and he would fucking... No, I'm seriously telling this as a fact. I've had a debate with this guy, and this guy is so incompetent with his arguments. He'll literally say to your arguments, no, they don't seem to have a single value to me, so I'm just going to ignore them. Yeah.
Well, I've dealt with people like that before.
Darth Dawkins.
Why did he leave immediately?
Yeah, I wonder why he left. I'll debate.
No. I think it's we're talking about something else. If we were talking about God or
If we were talking
religion,
about religion, yeah, well, he just missed the part where we were talking about the evangelical Christians and the
But,
Republican
this does
Party.
actually lead me back to one thing I wanted to talk about on the original topic. I'm sorry, like on the original topic of guns and everything like that, which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
what
yeah.
causes a lot of these mass shootings and whatnot. I think also a great part of the problem is both political and religious radicalism. And I think a lot of the times, I'm still looking into more of it. I don't want to say that I know one way or the other, but I think that there's been a little bit of suspicious evidence released from the whole thing in Parkland that this guy might have been in some way loosely associated with a white nationalist militia and whatnot. Because I don't know how credible the articles are, but you could look it up. That there were apparently swastikas drawn into the magazines that were left behind at the school in Parkland. And also, originally, when the day the day it happened, one of the first stories you heard was that some group called the Republic of Florida, which is apparently
Yeah,
a
yeah,
notable
I
white
did hear that.
nationalist militia,
And
that they
then
claimed that they had trained
I'll
him,
be
and then
back.
they retracted their
right, well
Um,
then no, I did see that as well, but there was that on 4chan or whatever that said they were basically yeah, and that this wasn't true. But then not too long ago, like you had just mentioned, it had come out that there were swastikas drawn on his
magazines,
magazine or yeah. So
which
I don't
is,
really know. I honestly think that it is
I don't know if that's confirmed yet or not. So I'm not stating that it's like that it's an absolute
I
fact that
actually
there
think that
were.
it doesn't really matter that much. I think that even though I find white supremacists to be problematic in our society, I don't agree
Which
with.
is
I
strange because
think
he's a
that
Cuban heritage, I believe. It's
yeah, I
really
think
that.
yeah, I know it is very strange, but I think that most is disgusting as I find their ideology. I don't think that I mean most white supremacists aren't out shooting people up. I guess you know what I mean.
You give it time,
Um,
dude. You give it time with this conflict between Antifa and the alt right and everything. It's eventually going to come down to something more serious, man. It always starts off as skirmishes between the brown shirts and the black
I
shirts.
understand, and I don't disagree with you
That
that
happens all the time, and we never
it
expect
could
it.
definitely become problematic. I guess I don't know. I mean, we're just gonna have to see what happens. I think what I'm really scared of is when this Mueller investigation starts coming to a head, and then you have some real serious people indicted. If that happens, I think that's when some clashes are
Explain.
going to
Okay,
start.
here's the thing. Explain to me exactly what you think Trump is responsible for in this case.
Um, Basically, I think that I mean it's been admitted by his son. They basically were in contact with Russia and Russian hackers, trading information. They talked about sanctions in one of the meetings. It came out that is verifiable that they talked about Russian sanctions and stuff like that. They changed the the Republican platform with the Ukraine. It's all very obviously quid pro quo. I mean, in the very beginnings of it, I was very skeptical, but as more and more comes out, if you just go ahead, if you just look at a timeline and just look at all the things that have come out and read some of the indictments, it's I would find it hard. There's no like smoking gun per se to say that Trump knew about this, but there are so many just odious connections with his campaign staff and Russians, and then admittingly taking information about that, and is quite frankly illegal. Okay, to do what they
See,
did,
I
and
hesitate to
honestly,
speak about anything
I
like this.
truly in Russia and Trump has I mean we'll see, but everybody that seems to know things about Trump or whatever, some of these intelligence people and stuff like that in law enforcement, they seem to think he's been laundering money for basically the Russian mafia for a long time. You know what I mean? Through his businesses. I mean, he had connections with the La Cosa Nostra in the 80s,
Laundering
I want
money
to
for the
believe.
Russian mafia. Why? I'm trying to understand why he would even have connections to the Russian mafia.
I mean, he's a very rich businessman. I mean, he went bankrupt so many times. I mean, American banks stopped he was getting basically loans, getting
He's
money
not
from
like
Russia.
Russian oligarch rich though. He's
No,
not
he's
that
not.
rich.
No. Listen, he is not.
That's what I'm just trying to understand exactly. Like, I
Right.
mean, here's my thing. Like I've been sort of aware
Well,
of
listen,
Trump for a
I
long
don't know
time.
Trump's motive for any of it, but I mean, what else can you say about all of the facts coming out of the Russia investigation? I don't see how anyone in their right mind can say that there is no dubious connections between the Trump campaign
I
and
think one
Russia.
of the biggest problems is the fact that Trump, while himself not being much of a establishment figurehead, he has sort of surrounded himself with the establishment anyways. And, the whole drain the swamp thing has kind of gone down the drain. I
I
definitely would
mean,
agree with that.
that's
Yeah,
another thing too. That's I
that's
mean,
the point
dude,
I'm getting at, though. It
this is
is
the
like,
most corrupt I think this is one of the most
I don't
corrupt
think it's the
administrations
most
we've
corrupt
seen
administration. Like, dude, I mean, honestly,
in
here's
modern
the thing.
times. Maybe you go back to Nixon. Maybe you have to go back to.
People go out in the streets and have mass protests for when there's some vague tweets about a potential ban from refugees of certain countries, whatnot. We call it a Muslim ban and everything. But for 8 goddamn years, when Obama was doing what he did to the Middle East, you just didn't hear the same people speaking out. And
Okay,
it's
so
just,
why does that matter? How does that speak on anything about corruption in the Trump administration? That has nothing to
Obama
do
got
with
away with quite a bit.
corruption.
Obama got away with
We're
quite a
not.
bit
We're talking about
without a deal
Trump
with.
right now. We're not talking about
Okay,
Obama.
but you're saying
We're
the
talking
most
about Donald
but you're
Trump.
saying the most corrupt administration whatever. Like, so it like, or obviously,
Dude,
or
I
at
mean,
least
there's a
in recent
scandal every
history.
other day. It seems like. I mean, come on, with Jared Kushner and the security clearances alone, that's so like the Republican
You
Party's
don't think
supposed
that's
to be the
because that
national
there's
security party. I mean, are you kidding me, man? That
you
is
don't
like
you don't
that's
think at
insane to
all that
me.
it's because that there is simply a plethora, much more left-wing media out there than there is right-wing media, especially when it comes to right-wing mainstream media.
No, I think
Like,
that's
you don't think
making
a lot of
excuses. The facts
no,
are
I'm
the
not making I'm
facts.
not trying to make excuses. I'm just trying to say, like, you don't think that it all just could be a reality, that there is not nearly as much conservative media out there as there is liberal media.
What
And
does
again,
what does that have to do with Jared Kushner's security clearances
I'm
and the
saying the
fact that
coverage
other
of
countries were talking
you're
about
talking.
manipulating him
I'm
and
saying
he was
because all these
basically
scandals, all these like you didn't see all these like you didn't see CNN covering all these scandals with Obama, and like they don't want to talk about all the scandals behind the
first
Clinton
of all,
family.
what scandals?
And
What scandals? Because every time I see something
especially,
come out from the right wing media, it's usually crushed within days. I mean, it's usually pretty silly, just like that Nunes memo. I mean, that was
I'm mostly talking about what he's done overseas. I strongly disagree with how Obama
I
handled
think
public
that I mean
foreign
people.
affairs.
So okay, so the left can be called hypocritical for not talking about his drone wars and the NSA shit and the
Yeah,
problems
mass casualties.
that I've had with Obama. That's fine. You can say that the left has been hypocritical, but what does that have to do again with the Trump administration? I
Well,
mean,
but you're
what does
talking
that
about
have to do with
because you were
how many
comparing
indictments
you
have
were
we already had in this? Yeah, it hasn't. It's so his
because you were
campaign manager.
because you were sort of comparing them, and the thing is, like, you're saying, like, the
Well, I
Trump
wasn't. I just
administration
said
is
that
the
these.
most
Yeah,
corrupt.
if you're saying that the Obama administration was more corrupt than the Trump administration, I have to disagree with you on that one. I just have.
I think our political system is inherently corrupt to begin with. Like,
I
we have
think that it is inherently corrupt to begin with, but that does not excuse Trump's behavior. And
no, I'm
Trump,
not saying, but the thing is, like, who has Trump wrongfully killed? Like,
I mean,
whose rights has he taken away? Who, like, is there a
what
body
do
count
you,
behind Trump? Like,
not as of now. Not that I know of. I mean, who no, nobody knows
well,
how
but
deep
like, so
all this
like,
Russia stuff goes. I mean, there's obviously been some dead bodies come up with the whole Russia thing, which is most likely not Trump ordering anybody to kill him, but obviously
I'll
Putin.
tell you one thing.
I
I
mean,
think
they're
Clinton's a better example of scandals that have been covered up by the media than Obama would be, especially. Like, I don't think you're going to deny the great deal of scandals behind the Clinton family. I can understand why.
I don't deny that the Clintons are a opportunist kind
They're
of
crony capitalist
political
fucks.
crony capitalist, just like George W. Bush. But again, I fail to
Yes.
see I fail to
The,
see what any of that has to do with Donald Trump, and this is why you can never have a conversation
well,
with a
because
Trump supporter because they
I'm
always
not.
go back to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama.
I'm
And
not
I
just
mean,
trying to do
have
that. I'm
you
trying.
read
The
any of
point.
the
The point I'm
indictments?
trying to
Have
make
you
is
read
that
any
Trump
of the
is.
indictments in the Russian? We were talking about the Russia investigation. Have you read any of the
Wouldn't
indictments
you
in the
expect
Russia
someone?
investigation?
Wouldn't you expect someone from a family of a political dynasty, if somebody from within the establishment already, to be more likely to have ties with other foreign countries than you would somebody who's not part of those establishment families?
I don't know why that even matters. I would expect to go where the evidence goes, which all of the evidence has come out has that says that the Trump campaign has connections to Russia. All this, like, what would you expect or why would you think? I don't have to conjecture. I don't have to speculate on any of it because it's all staring us right in the face.
I just,
It is. It's
I just,
staring us right in the deny it. Go ahead and deny it, but
I
seriously,
just
bring it.
don't
Just
think,
read
I
about
just
it.
don't, as far as Trump's personal responsibility for anything that may have occurred within his administration, colluding with Russia and everything, I just don't see why he would be personally interested in it. But I could definitely think that, perhaps
Money, money.
there could be people within his administration that are not exactly trustworthy, and I think that's been shown from the amount of people that he's been firing already, and
Trump Trump is either running a criminal enterprise or which one is it? Because seriously, how many
what?
people have been,
Okay, see,
dude? How
I'm
many
not falling
people
for your
he hires?
ultimatum.
Listen,
I'm not
no,
like
he
it's
hires the
not.
best people. How many people have been left the administration? How many people are being indicted? So Paul Manafort, he's being indicted for a conspiracy against the U.S.
Trump's
How many
fired a lot of people.
tax? Money laundering, okay, and Paul Manafort is the one that got the Ukraine, okay, after meetings with Russia, okay, that's Sergey, oh, I forget his name. I just don't understand, man. Like, you have to do some crazy mental gymnastics to not see that there is an obvious connection with the Trump campaign in Russia. And I
I'm
mean,
not
at this
exactly
point,
denying
Trump
that anybody.
himself in Russia.
I'm not denying that anybody within his campaign could have been doing something as far as Russian collusion going. I just don't. I don't think there's any concrete evidence to prove that Trump is personally
Jared Kushner,
responsible.
his son-in-law, tried to set up a back channel to the Kremlin, for God's sakes, man.
Well, I've never
And
liked the
and
fact
and,
that
and
Jared
listen,
Kushner is in the White House,
oh,
anyways.
but yeah, and Ivanka, that right there, just even if it wasn't for stuff, the
Yeah, I don't.
nepotism is
I'm not for
ridiculous.
political families. I don't think your whole family gets to have a career in politics just because you won an
No,
election.
no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But and I mean, come on, man. So if you want to say, I'll go there for just a second. Do you think Trump, the way he is, wouldn't know about things going? You think that he wouldn't have any
I think
part in
he'd
it? You think
probably
he'd
be
just
pretty
let
easy
people
to keep
take the
secrets
wheel
from.
and be like, "Here, just go ahead,
I
guys." Like,
I
yep,
think Trump would be
Trump
pretty
is a
easy to keep secrets from. I think Trump would be pretty easy to take advantage of.
well. I mean, if you flatter him, sure. I mean, yeah, there are certainly
That's
ways
not
to take
flattering.
advantage of
That's
Trump.
probably an insult to him. That's not flattering him. I'm saying he's probably pretty
No, no,
naive
I'm saying no.
about the
What I
people
meant
around
is,
him.
yeah. I mean, you can pretty much. I mean, they say there's been multiple leaks out of the White House. Basically, the last person that talks to Trump pretty much is the one who influenced him that day. I mean, you know what I mean,
I
and stuff.
mean,
How
yeah.
true or not true it is, I don't know.
I think he's pretty
But I
malleable,
really
honestly.
I find it I find it hard to believe that everybody in that everybody like Jared Kushner, Betsy DeVos's brother, who also tried to set up a back channel. Communication or back channel communication channel or however the fuck you want to say it. What Paul Manafort, Rick Gates, that little weasel looking fucker. He's like Carter Page, um, Michael Flynn, Jeff Sessions. He's not been indicted or anything, but
I don't like
he's
Jeff Sessions either.
it doesn't matter.
There's a
But
lot
my
of
point
people
is,
in
it
the
doesn't
Trump
matter if you like
administration
these
I
people or
don't
not.
like.
It's how can you possibly believe that basically everyone in the Trump campaign has had these Russia connections? I mean, Hope Hicks, she's not
All right,
indicted yet, but
can I explain something for a second? First of all, I am not, and I never was a hardcore Trump supporter. Okay, I voted for him for for one primary reason at the time, and I understand why some people may not agree with it, but I've been very strongly against Hillary Clinton or anybody else within the Clinton or the Bush families or any of the most recent, like the Kennedys and the Reagans. I don't want
No,
Nixons.
believe me,
I don't want
and we've
political
talked about
dynasties to
it,
begin
and
with.
I think that's fair. I disagree who
And
the better
also
choice was,
also
but that's
Hillary
fair
Clinton.
to me. I
I
understand.
also I also think that Hillary Clinton as an individual is a worse choice. I do not trust her. I see her as the figurehead of everything that is wrong and corrupt about this entire country. She is the primary beneficiary of political dynasties, and I do not accept the fact that we're going to just elect this person because we feel that it's time, as if it's her turn. Like that was the sentiment from a lot of people on the left, and I I trust nobody in politics less than Hillary Clinton. Trump, to me, seems incredibly malleable. I think he's demonstrated that. I think he has ideas and he often goes back on them because I think he's learning and I think he's trying to adapt to, what he's actually capable of doing. And just like you say, the last person to talk to was the person that influenced him that day. I think he's willing to try new ideas. I think he's one thing that's different from him and most Republicans is the fact that he's even entertaining the idea of bashing the NRA. No Republicans ever done that before, So like
Yeah, again, though,
I
going
just don't
back
I
to
don't see him
everything
as
that.
this like he's
But
not.
going back to what we say before, what I've said before, though, you can say anything you want. The policy is what matters. So when you're talking about, like, when we first started the conversation about gun control, one thing I didn't get to say, but I wanted to say when we were talking about Trump, I don't really give a shit what he says about the NRA or we will find out how Trump feels about guns when there's actual policy implemented. That's what really matters. It doesn't really
Well,
matter what
the
people
first
say
steps
about
are going to
things.
be the increases in security. That's going to
Yes,
be the first
I
thing,
understand, right?
and then probably the ban
But
on
that's
bump
my but
stocks.
I mean, I don't want to get back into gun control, but that's my point. Like, actions are what matters to me. A
Well, he said
person's
he was going to do an
ideology does
executive
matter
order.
to an extent because that can predict actions. Obviously, I don't want a white nationalist in the white, I don't want a white supremacist in the White House because we kind of know what kind of
Obvious reasons.
policies we would get. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? You can predict policies from ideology,
You
but
don't think
at
Trump's a
the
white
end,
nationalist, do you?
no, I really don't. I think Trump is a Trumper. If Trump is a racist, it's only, I said if Trump is a
Hmm.
racist, it's only because he thinks everyone's below him. You know what I mean? Like, in the sense he's white, obviously someone
I
different
would
than
say
what
that's
I
actually
don't.
pretty individualist. It's pretty collective, but also like I mean, hell, if you're not judging by race, I think everybody's dumb.
Right.
It's egotistical if anything. But
That's what I mean. I think he's such a narcissist that that's the only reason he would be is because of his
I think the
narcissism.
core of this.
I don't think he's like race. Yeah,
I think the
like
core of this is like, do you think he has any sort of evil intent or like any sort of malicious agenda he's behind, like where he's trying to create some sort of dystopian society or something like that?
no, no. I think he's no. I don't even. I rarely try to assign evil to anyone because crime in matters like that are very complicated. I don't think that Trump is maniacally laughing behind the desk in the Oval Office, right, trying to create this dystopian future. I think that Donald Trump is using the White House and in using the people that support him basically to profit. Basically, he's profiting from this all. This is what it's all about. It's what it's
Every
always been about with
politician
Trump
profits,
is
though.
money. I get that, but I just find it very funny that everybody's like drain the swamp, and you basically put the swamp in. I mean, that is the swamp
The thing
right
is,
there.
that's exactly, he's not the swamp though. He's not part of these dynasties that have killed so many people across overseas. He's not part of these
I
establishment
mean, but
families that
listen, do
have built
you
this
agree
culture
or
of corruption.
disagree that Russia is a hostile foreign nation? I mean, they
Russia,
attempted to undermine our elections, whether they succeeded or not. Okay, whether they influence votes or whatever, they have been in other
I
countries,
think they've
and
done
that's
that
what I'm
with every
saying. Like,
American election since the beginning of the Cold War. I don't think
but
it's
what I'm
unique to
saying
Trump.
is Russia is our friend as much as people. I think it's a pipe dream as much as it would be nice if America and Russia could be friends. While Vladimir Putin is in power, Russia and the United States are not going to be friends. Okay, like
What's
it's
poppin',
just
players?
Hey man,
what's
what's up?
up. But I'm just saying, like, why would you be okay So you made your decision. You thought that Trump was better choice than Hillary. Fine. I
I'm
mean, I
not saying
respect that. I
I don't
respect
like
that.
the lesser
Okay.
of two evils thing. I'm not trying to say the lesser of two evils thing,
No,
because
but
I don't think Trump is
no, but
evil.
we were given a choice, and I made my
Yeah.
choice, and you made yours. That's fine. Now it's all over with. So I wouldn't hold. I said it before. I don't hold anybody's vote for Trump against them or for Hillary or any. You made a choice, but now I don't understand if you.
Still support him in any way.
I don't understand how how you can still support Donald, how anyone can still support Donald Trump with the corruption and the. I mean, basically profiting. I mean,
Do you
look
guys
at Ben
think Trump really
Carson.
matters? Do you think the president really even has that much of an effect on the whole scheme of things? Because, to be honest, a lot of people think like obviously it's just bad for the society, bad for the media and the public face of like the country and the city.
Well, he's definitely. I think he definitely has. I think
He actually seems to be
standing in the world.
incredibly popular in every country he
To be honest,
visits.
the people are putting him into power. Do you guys want to give you this question? Do you think the people are putting him in power, or he's putting himself in power? Which one do you think is leaning more towards?
I think the people definitely put him in power. Like, he won through the
That should
electoral
go for really any
college.
president, right?
He won. The thing is, people are always arguing about, like, does Trump represent the people or does Trump represent himself? And obviously, Trump didn't win the popular vote, so you can't really see he represents the majority of people. But
Yeah, there's no
the electoral
mandate.
college,
He won the election, but he
Yeah.
certainly doesn't have a mandate.
He really only needed to convince, yeah, he did his thing, man. I guess he just knew what he needed to
he
do.
went through all the small towns in America, places that politicians
Yeah.
haven't visited in a very long time,
Yep.
and he captured an audience that was, for the most part, politically unaffiliated, politically inactive for a long period of time. That's why
Republicans still have a lot of power, too.
Yeah, because they have the support of the states with the most electoral power. Power. Sorry.
Not per
the-
capita. I mean, they have the ones where it's like fucking 700 votes counts for this state, or 700,000. I mean, and then the other state's only like fucking 42,000 is one.
Yeah, but like it works out to a point where like they kind of always will have the Rust Belt, the Bible Belt, like that those sort of areas will kind of just for some reason never change, and people within the coastal regions are always going to probably fall more to the center and more to the left.
Yeah, sure. As long as there's agriculture and people don't have to start going to college and getting all liberal and shit with everybody else. Because I mean, they're taking people. I'm sure taking people out of agricultural settings and then just saying, we'll give you a scholarship here, go to this like technical fucking college and end up becoming liberal. I mean, obviously.
Why would you think that though? Why does everybody have you guys ever been to college? Because I have a college degree, and I was not indoctrinated at all.
No, we're not saying indoctrination. We're not
college
saying
in general is more lefty unless you're in a religious. If you're in a religious private college, but I'm in Chicago. I go to community college right now, and it's just real lefty. All school is lefty. I think in my area, like I'm in Chirac, Illinois.
It's just the general atmosphere in like people within colleges and universities just typically. But
hey guys, I just posted on the Layback Room. Basically, Sogan McCard. His event was literally attacked by Antifa thugs, and there's like amazing footage of Antifa thugs being like getting into a headlock by these posh.
Oh, he had an event
guys.
Today, right?
Yeah, he had an event today, and he, holy shit, dude. Just
did anybody get killed or hurt?
Click on the Layback Room. Click on the Layback Room 1, and you'll see the footage.
Okay, I gotta scroll down to the bottom here.
Yeah, what time is it? I actually.
You gotta head out.
Oh, yeah, I gotta start getting in the shower and shit.
It's
Yeah,
fucking pi 3.14 right now for me.
Nice.
3:14 p.m.
Yeah, it's 4:15 here, so I have.
Yeah, you had plans at 4:30. I remember.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and let you go. We
all right,
about this
all right, fellas. Yeah, we can have another stream. Hopefully, she's been taking up a lot of my time. She's fucking hot. When you get my age, you gotta take what you can get, man.
Definitely.
All right.
All right, see you, man. All right, you guys want to talk about this Antifa thing? This is my first time hearing about
Yeah,
this.
yeah. Click on if you want to see the footage.
Video.
Click on the laid back room one.
All right. Damn, loud. Probably very loud for the stream. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the volume way down on the video. Did Sargon get attacked?
No, he didn't. There's a funny image where they basically stole the Antifa flags and they literally burnt it on stage.
Really? Wow. Goddamn. That's a message right there.
Yeah, that's literally Antifa getting
Hello.
owned.
Yeah, he burned it on
This is
stage indoors? What the
Starbird,
fuck?
and
No, actually no, he didn't burn it down, he just ripped it.
So
just
it
ripped
looks
it
like
apart.
Okay.
this just happened. Sargon of Akkad,
But it's
with a
so
bunch of
fucking
skeptics and moderates,
Yeah. Who's the parrot
including
talking?
Susanna Moores, who I've never heard of before,
I don't know.
got together for a
some
chat
random
about
YouTuber.
Randian objectives
Yeah, some random
and
YouTuber,
free
yeah.
speech. And
Now he's an owl.
unfortunately, a bunch of Antifa chaps entered the building and started violently attacking speakers, including Sargon, stealing microphones, pushing people around, hanging flags, yelling in German, and throwing smoke bombs apparently. While they were forced out eventually, they continued to run amok outside, and apparently
Yelling
a
in German
fire
is
alarm
probably
was
not a
pulled,
good look.
which forced the event to be shut down.
What?
I
I
don't
said
know
yelling
what the
in
details are
German is
yet, but
probably
yeah,
not a good
even
look
I
in
Oh,
haven't
this
heard
country.
what they were
If
yelling in
anyone
German in the
has information,
footage?
Please let me know in the comments,
Yeah.
and of course you can contact
I
anyone
hope this guy
involved,
gets to the footage
and
soon.
quite possibly the police.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
I really hate
I mean,
these people.
they attacked their
It's
event, so they're
journalism,
entitled to
you know.
give them shit, in my opinion.
Involved in politics.
Yeah, that didn't
That's
seem to be
good.
much of the actual footage. That was mostly just the guy
Yeah.
talking about it. Maybe I clicked on the wrong video or something.
Yeah, Oh, but man, this is the highlight of my day now. It actually makes me wish that I was there so I could club some Antifa. Because I've got like an extended baton. You know, in Watch Dogs, you know, the main character Aiden Pierce, he's got that extended baton that he uses for self-defense. I've got one of those. I'd literally fucking pulverize these people.
Yeah. Okay, I think I
But-
found
but-
some better footage here in the
Oh.
channel.
Oh, if you found some better footage, could you link it to me in the laid back room?
Yeah, here. Copy link. Someone else just posted it like a little bit ago. There we go.
Oh no, I've already seen this.
I haven't seen this yet. Let me see.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah. Yeah, there are two black security guards that are literally whooping their asses. It's so funny. I'm literally whooping them.
What is the point of this?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Get his mask off.
I actually want. There's actually going to be. There's going to be a liberalist meetup soon.
Mm.
And I think it's going to be somewhere in the UK, and I literally want to go on Saturday.
Yeah. Man, like this happened at a liberalist meetup.
Yeah, pretty much.
This sort of violence towards something with liberal in the name. Could you? Oh my god.
Yeah, I know. It's fucking it's
We literally
it's
have
fucking retarded.
we have hooded socialists storming conferences for. Hold on.
You there?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I had a phone call real quick. I just ignored it. Anyways, we have hooded communists running into liberal conferences, yelling in German, and like people are debating whether this is still an issue or not. what the fuck is going on? It's like they're not even fighting the alt-right or anything. Like they're fighting like liberals and centrists and shit. What the fuck?
Yeah. But they're just doing it because they deem us alt-right. Oh my god, I wish I was there. I really wish I was there. Because
I wish I
holy
was there
shit.
with a megaphone. I would just love to say so many things to these people.
No, because, I wish, oh god. Why did I miss it?
It's just bizarre to think like what why are the police, first of all, like the police look like they're in raincoats. Like what the fuck does this guy have to enforce anything?
These are, I think these are, ticket security guards. So they're
Oh my god.
they're pretty much dressed up like that. Last time when I went to a Sargon event, they were dressed up like that as well. But yeah, I think.
I mean, I guess you're not gonna quite have Ben Shapiro level security. It's just so bizarre. I can't believe this kind of shit is still happening. What have they earned from this? What have they succeeded in doing? Apparently, there's new footage here.
Oh, new footage.
Oh my god, the volume on these videos. Oh, the whistles and shit going off.
I've seen this.
I don't think I've seen this part.
Oh, this is hilarious. That one of the guys in the suit just gets him in a headlock and does that. Holy shit, that is so base, dude. That is exactly what I would have done. I would have literally fucking you know what I would have done, right? If I could have gone away with it, I would have literally backed. You know when you get somebody on the ground, you could just hit them with your knee. In essence, I would have just whacked them with my knee. Literally would have broken a few bones if I did that, but
Yeah.
fuck.
They got that guy's face on camera after his mask came off. I guarantee 4chan's gonna find out who he is.
Yeah, get fucked. Get fucked, Antifa. Get fucked.
This is really because, like, yeah. Here's the thing. People are always asking me like I remember I had a run-in. I posted about this in the Liberalist group, but I had a run-in at a local store where like I was
oh man, Sargon is literally based. Sargon is so based. He's such a base dude. Oh fuck. He's just dealt with it like in a calm way. Holy shit! I think he's gonna make a video about this.
Oh, probably. I imagine. I definitely imagine.
And if
but, like,
next time if I'm going to his event, I'm so going. I'm literally so going because I really want to fucking meet these fucks and literally beat the shit out of them because I see them as my fucking enemy, man.
I would really like this kind of thing to stop happening, though. Like, this is gonna get really dangerous eventually. Like, you know, eventually, man, it starts off as just like, yeah, they're attacking liberals and centrists and shit, and then eventually, dude, like, you know, if the alt-right gets involved in a lot of these more conflicts, more like they did in like Charlottesville and whatnot, man, like this shit's gonna get fucking real dangerous real quick, you know, because like you don't want to fucking fight a fucking bunch of hardcore nationalists and shit, man, and they're gonna eventually draw those fucking people out. And you don't see the alt-right attacking liberal conferences.
Yeah, but if there's blood fights, I want to see blood fights. If they've got it recorded and they upload it online, holy shit, dude, mission accomplished. I'm sorry if I'm sounding like I'm encouraging violence, but to a degree I am because I want to see the fucking battles. I mean, did you see the footage of the Battle of Berkeley? That was literally gold. I want more of that shit.
What happened? Oh, I'm sorry. You said the Battle of Berkeley. For a second there, I thought you said something about bath salts. I don't know why. Anyways,
no. The Battle of Berkeley
I saw all of the Battle of Berkeley. Yeah, but you know, like
when Goldilocks got punched.
This, like, it's really disturbing too because it's like you just don't see the alt-right initiating these kind of things. They're always kind of like the responders, if anything. Like they have their not really protests, but like they have their rallies and everything, and the left always, you know, protests them, and eventually, you know, the left kind of always initiates the violence. But it's like, what the fuck, man? People are so focused on how awful and evil the alt-right is. But it's like, dude, Antifa, like, they're trying to hurt people. They're trying
Yeah.
to legitimately hurt people, and
Yeah,
it's
but
it's
this
like
is the thing. They're left wing, so they can get away with it. So
yeah,
fuck
it's
'em.
really
Like
bizarre
seriously,
to me.
people seriously, Antifa deserve more shit. In my opinion, they deserve more fucking shit thrown at them because for the shit that they've got away with is just fucking outrageous. Hey,
Yeah.
Nicholas, you're right. You're right,
Hello,
Nicholas.
Just checking in.
Have you seen the Antifa footage of storming in Sargon's event?
Yes, they didn't perform very well.
No, they
Yeah.
didn't. Not from what I've just seen. I just really don't understand the point of all this, though. Is like, what do they intend to achieve? You're just making these things like you're making your opponents more popular when you have these sort of viral videos going around the internet. People are going to wonder, hey, why did this happen? When they see that, oh, this random guy's getting beat up in front of a stage. You know, it's like now people are going to look into it, and it's like you've just given Sargon a bigger audience. What is the goal here?
You know, the picture of Sargon holding up an Antifa flag is pretty great.
Oh yeah.
See,
Oh, you could say that 1,000 times, dude.
that's my biggest problem with Antifa, dude. The very name Antifa is so deceptive. Like, it's a group that claims to stand against something, but not officially for anything. And if you say you're like, against Antifa, what? You're against anti-fascism? And it's like, no, obviously every common, decent person is against fascism. But it's like, there's more to it than that. They're just as authoritarian. They're just not quite fascist. You know, like it's bizarre. It's bizarre to watch that people just tolerate it because it's their side, or it's the far end of their side. That was one of the things I was going to talk about earlier. Is like the left-wing media, man, just does not cover half this shit, man. Like CNN, Al Jazeera,
Because they're biased,
the Young
dude. They're
Turks.
biased.
They've all made propaganda pieces for Antifa, especially Al Jazeera and the Young Turks, man. They are outright Antifa apologists. Like they don't give a fuck about it. It's just what's funny is like back in like 2011, 2012, when I first started voting, like I was 18 back in 2012. So Obama's re-election was the first election I was able to vote in, and I voted for Obama largely because of the influence I had from places like Al Jazeera and the Young Turks, and you know, the sort of like I guess now I would view them as like far left sources, sort of portraying themselves as rational centrists that are not biased and everything like that. But now it's like you won't see this kind of violence, you know, being talked about on the media. If anything, Fox will do something about it. Who knows? Maybe Tucker Carlson will have Sargon on. That'd be an adventure. You guys ever watch any Tucker Carlson interviews?
A few, but I don't really keep up to date with Tucker.
All right. Well, I'm headed to bed. Do
All right, good
make
night.
sure to tell like Death Singer. I think he's the only mod here right now. Be
Alright,
be
cool.
nice to him.
All right. I'll see you guys. Bye.
Yeah. See ya. I'm gonna go ahead and cut the stream here. I'll talk to everybody later. By the way, I don't actually like Tucker Carlson. He's a schmuck, but his interviews are sometimes funny.